231, Public Law 1975, be advised that the notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board at Town Hall and mailing to the officially designated newspapers. A list of meeting dates annually indicating that this meeting would take place at the Town Hall at 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday, June 19th, 2019.
Daniel Bear?
Yes.
Elaine Becker?
Here.
Cheryl Burstein?
I'm here.
Diane Aglo?
Here.
Gaston Halbert?
Here.
Lori Metro Petro?
Here.
Mark Maxwell?
Here.
Tracy Goldenberg?
Here.
Miriam Salerno?
Here.
That's all.
Here. And yeah, I didn't really note for attendance, but Joe Steinberg is
Gonna come.
Yeah, is abstaining
Yep.
himself for the time and he'll be here for after following the application tonight. Just stick this in, pardon me, sorry. Okay. The first item that we're gonna cover tonight is
Can you turn your mics on?
Oh, sorry.
Dan.
Okay, great. The first item for this evening is approval of the minutes of both May 1st and May 15th. Let's start with May 1st, 2019. Were there any additional or any comments or corrections that were not previously submitted? And was there red line of this one?
Joe pointed out I had left the wrong header on, so it appeared.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, the zoning, that's right. I can see that. Any further comments? Okay, so barring that change, the only people who can vote on the minutes are those in attendance. Do you mind reminding us, since it's been a month and a half since then, who can? It was on here, okay. Would anybody make a motion to approve the minutes of May 1st?
So,
And a second?
I can't remember if that's the one I missed.
I can't remember if that's the one I missed.
Yeah.
I was I'll move to second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, meeting minutes from May 1st are approved. May 15th, 2019. I think similarly it was the same heading issue on this one too. Okay, were there any further changes?
No.
Okay. Does anybody else have any further comments? Okay. Motion to approve the minutes of May 15th.
So moved.
In a second. I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Meeting minutes of May 15th, approved. Thank you. We have 4 memorializations that we received. This first one, 19003, TNT Fitness 1. Are there any comments regarding this memorialization? This one we received a while ago. I had to go back to find it. It was also from, we had received it earlier in May.
Eligible to vote are Dan Bear, Elaine Becker, Diane Aglo, Gaston Halbert, Lori Metro Petro, Miriam Salerno, and that's all.
Thank you. Anybody want to make a motion to approve these?
Motion to
memorializations?
approve.
Second.
Thank you.
Daniel Bear?
Yes.
Elaine Becker?
Yes.
Diane Aglo?
Yes.
Gaston Halbert?
Yes.
Lori Metro Petro?
Yes.
Miriam Salerno?
Yes.
That's all.
Yes. Okay, our second memorialization, 19006, Cartley Associates. Can you give us the eligibility on this one, please?
Dan Bear, Elaine Becker, Cheryl Burstein, Diane, Gaston, Jorge, Mark Matzel, and that's all.
Great. If anybody, did anybody have any changes or comments before we? Okay, anyone make a motion to approve?
Move to approve?
Second.
Daniel Bear?
Yes.
Elaine Becker?
Yes.
Cheryl Burstein?
Yes.
Diane Aglo?
Yes.
Gaston Halbert?
Yes.
Lori Metro Petro?
Yes.
Mark Matzel?
Yes.
That's all.
Yes. Thank you. The third one, 19007, Brow Eyed Girl. Any comments on the same people? Thank you. Yes. The subsequent, these last 3 were all the same meeting, correct? These last 3, yeah. Okay. Any comments on this memorialization? Okay. Motion to approve. Somebody?
So moved.
Oh,
Sorry. I'll take the second.
Great. Thanks.
Daniel Bear?
Yes.
Elaine Becker?
Yes.
Cheryl Burstein?
Yes.
Diane Aglo?
Yes.
Gaston Halbert?
Yes.
Lori Metro Petro?
Yes.
Mark Matzel?
Yes.
That's all.
Yes. And our final, 19008, Anishkana. Any issues with, or comments regarding the memorialization? Great. Motion to approve? Any second?
Second.
Thank you.
Dan Dare.
Yes.
Elaine Becker.
Yes.
Earl Bernstein.
Yes.
Diane Aglo.
Yes.
Justin Halpern.
Yes.
Lauren Westergaard.
Yes.
That's all.
Yes. Okay, so that concludes the memorializations portion of our evening. And now we move on to application 19009, 40 East Willow. I invite you to come forward. And as noted, Joe is recusing himself from this hearing.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Michael Kaplonsky on behalf of the applicant 40 East Willow LLC. It's been my experience in the past that you would prefer to hear the waivers first. Is that still the case?
That is the case, yes, thank you.
So I believe the only waiver we're seeking is a waiver of the EIS requirement under 509.7. Mr. Lanzafama from Casey and Keller is here to discuss the basis for that application.
I do. My name is Michael Lanzafama. That's L-A-N-Z-A-F-A-M-A. I'm a licensed professional engineer, land surveyor and planner, licensed in the state of New Jersey. I'm a principal with the firm of Casey and Keller Incorporated, 258 Main Street, Millburn, New Jersey. I've testified before this board on numerous occasions.
And you're testifying as a planner.
As an engineer
As
and a
engineer.
planner and a surveyor, all three hats
All three
tonight.
hats,
All
okay.
three hats tonight. The application that you have before you is for a minor subdivision and also the redevelopment of existing tax lot 4. The property is such that it is almost fully paved. It's 80+% paved with an existing 11,000 square foot building on it. It's been used by Verizon for decades for a similar use that's going to be, the building will be utilized for in the near future. There's actually a reduction in the impervious area on the site. There'll be some new landscaping proposed. We don't see this use as being inconsistent with the area. It's all commercial area. We don't anticipate any extreme traffic generation as a result of this. Based upon those facts, the reduction in impervious area, the consistency with the master plan with regard to the use, the additional landscaping being proposed, as well as the enhancement of the building, we felt that an environmental impact statement wasn't warranted for this particular application this evening.
However, you did provide environmental documentation.
We
regarding
provided a stormwater
management.
management report, which basically summarized that the result of the site improvements will not generate any additional runoff. There is an existing subsurface detention basin on the site. It's an underground storage system made of dry wells. You know, the amount of rain we've had over the past several days, I inspected it this evening before I came here, and it is bone dry. So it indicates that we're into a very good strata, a very sandy material that allows the water to be absorbed back into the ground. So the roof leaders are connected to that, as well as some of the parking area. So again, based on those facts, it's my opinion that an environmental impact statement isn't warranted for this particular application.
Okay. And at this point, would you choose to approve the waiver request or leave that till the end?
No, we
Wanna
can
do that now?
yes.
Yeah, okay. Does anybody on the board have any questions before we choose to take a vote on whether we will hear this application approving the waiver request for the EIS?
Sure. Last
Go
question.
ahead, please.
Just, are there going to be any major soil disturbances with remilling or paving or anything like that? I know that the area's been used as a storage area for Verizon or whatever, just in case any chemicals or any kind of degradation to the land has happened.
No,
since
there's no indication that there's any pollutants on the site, to the best of our knowledge. Most of the parking area, as I said, pavement will be removed, new curbing would be installed, and areas would be milled and resurfaced. So you're not seeing an extensive amount of exposed soils being created.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
The site is in the floodplain. Have you any history, do you know any history
Yes.
about the site?
The flood hazard design elevation for the site is 95.2, I believe. The building is set at approximately 96.4, so the building itself is actually over a foot above the flood hazard design elevation. The back parking area is below the flood hazard elevation, but that has existed for years. If you take the elevation as determined by the flood studies, but the historical evidence is shown, even during Hurricane Sandy, that area had very minimal flooding.
What about during Irene?
Irene, again, had very minimal flooding.
Okay, thank you. So we need a motion to approve the waiver of the EIS.
So move.
Okay, we have a motion, Elaine the motion, and Cheryl the second.
Dan Bear,
Yes.
Elaine Becker,
Yes.
Cheryl Bernstein.
Yep.
Diane Aglow.
Yes.
Justin Howard,
Yes.
Corey Masterpietro,
Yes.
Mark Hansel,
Yes.
Miriam Salerno,
Yes.
that's all.
Yes.
Thank you. Just by way of some background and introduction, we were actually before this board approximately 3 years ago on behalf of a company called Starcom Fiber, which is going to ultimately be the occupant of this property. It's owned through a different entity, but there is contiguous ownership. The two gentlemen sitting behind me and to my right are the owners, Michael Kohler and William Welleman. Through 40 East Willow LLC, they acquired lots 4 and 5 approximately a year ago with the intent to relocate their business, which is currently at 61 East Willow, up to the existing structure that had been previously used by Verizon at 40. As was alluded to by Mr. Lanzafama, the property was previously used by Verizon as a base for their FiOS build-out. These gentlemen acquired Lot 40, and in the course of that transaction, the owners of Lot 30 also approached them and made that transaction, created that opportunity.
You're referring to lots 4 and 5, not
Yes,
lot
sir.
30 and 40.
Correct,
Right,
I'm
you're
You
sorry.
talking
said 30 and
address
40, you're
number,
using
yeah.
the street address, that's all,
I
just for the
apologize.
records, so the records.
Yes, 3s, 4s, 5s. Lots 4 and 5 became available at roughly the same time, and they acquired both of them. As any of you who are familiar with that site may recall, those lots were used more or less as one giant parcel by the Verizon employees for their personal vehicles, for the company vehicles, and for their material. But in fact, they are 2 separate lots. We discovered that Lot 5 had a kind of an interesting history, and that relates to the application for the variances that are going to be required there. As you can see from the drawings that Mr. Lanzafama prepared, that lot is only 100 feet wide. And it actually came out in the course of our investigation into the history of the property and some of the previous environmental exposures there in our effort as the purchasers to make sure that there were no potential environmental risks there, that that property actually was many years ago the right-of-way to a large greenhouse concern that was severed by Route 78. And so that 100-foot right-of-way actually continued all the way across 78 to property on the other side of what is now the highway. That parcel is sort of the last vestige of that and had been used for a number of purposes over the years, including the parking of trailers and other sort of less than ideal uses. The applicant, as you know, is here tonight for a lot line adjustment on a minor subdivision, but really amounts to a lot line adjustment to make Lot 5 conform to lot area and get the other nonconformities to diminish them as much as possible. The lot width will increase, although it is still non-conforming. Mr. Lanzafama can speak to some of the concerns that were raised in the professionals' reports on that subject. As he alluded to earlier, the square footage of impervious coverage on Lot 4 is actually decreasing, even though the percentage increases. The impervious area and the lot area are both decreasing. So it appears to be an increase in the ratio, or it's the percentage is increasing, but the actual square footage of coverage is decreasing. The goal, of course, being to try and take what is kind of a unique opportunity, I think, to take Lot 5, which is really almost unusable at this point because it is so undersized and sort of so awkwardly situated, and actually make it a viable lot. I believe the application conforms with the goals and objectives of your 2018 Master Plan Update. Goal 1.02 is to promote the appropriate mix of development in downtown and other commercial areas, and makes a recommendation for the CMO zone to recognize that a healthy, vibrant, non-residential land use space is a critically important township goal. Obviously, we'll require site plan approval as well. Mr. Lanzafama can speak to that in greater detail, but all of the proposed activities on Lot 4 conform with the permitted uses for the CMO zone, office, warehouse, parking, and loading, all permitted under 606.9. I think I would like to ask Mr. Michael Kohler of 40 East Willow LLC and Starcom Fiber, who's going to be the user of the property, to come up and speak to you a little bit about their operation as they foresee it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear on testimony that proceeds to be truthful.
I do.
Just state your name and spelling.
Michael Kohler, Kohler.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to start off by thanking you for hearing us this evening. My name is Michael Kohler. I'm CEO of Starcom Fiber. We're a telecommunication company based out of Millburn here, 61 East Willow. We've been here for about 3 years now. Just want to tell you a little bit about what we do. Starcom Fiber, we're a contracting resource for some of the big providers of communications in New York City. 90% of our workload is in Manhattan. We do work for Charter Communications, Light Tower, RCN, more of commercial providers. We basically do the work from the outside of the building through the manhole systems. We supply fiber up to high-rise buildings, and we actually do the fiber terminations. We're also a management company. We have CAD operators on our team. We have about 12 employees that are going to be working out of 40 East Willow, in-house employees that will be there on a day-to-day basis. I would hope that from what you guys have seen from us in the past at 61, you see the improvements that we've made to the building, and we've tried to mirror that over at 40 as far as the decor, the outside landscaping and whatnot. We're here for the long haul with the town. We really appreciate you guys having us here. It's a great tool for us to have 78 right here and the accessibility to get into Manhattan. We have very little on-street deliveries with what we're proposing as far as the new lot lines. We're proposing the drive-in and drive-out driveways just like we have at 61, and that has helped us with deliveries. This way we don't have to cause any traffic or whatnot in the neighborhood. With that being said, if you have any questions, I'd be more than welcome to answer at this time.
Great, thank you. Can you speak to, appreciate the egress and ingress of cars. Can you also speak about refuse storage and pickup garbage?
Sure, absolutely. We have in the back corner of the lot, we have a proposed dumpster right now. We're currently with South Orange Disposal, same company that we've been using at 61. As well as Bush Brothers, we've dealt with them out of Scotch Plains, New Jersey. It's a once-a-week pickup, and we really have not had a need for more than that. We have a warehouse manager that's on staff full-time that takes care of the yard area and makes sure everything is tidy. Perception is very important to us as our customers come in from the city for meetings daily, and we definitely have to, put on a good front for them to make sure that everything is neat and taken care of.
Appreciate that. Other questions from the board? Go ahead, Dan.
Mr. Kohler, thank you for your information. just so I understand what's going on back there now, I've noticed that the property that's part of this application is all being reclad now. Your sign's up on that property now.
Correct.
Correct? Okay. And it looks like you've moved out of 61. Have you moved over to that
Yeah.
property already?
Yes, we have a temporary CO right now
Okay.
that allows us to get into the building. We're functioning out of that building. We're leasing out 61 to a medical company. They're gonna come in, I guess they're gonna reach out to you guys and
Okay.
for approvals and all that.
All right.
It's an acne medication. I can't speak any more than that about it. They'll reach out to you,
Well, they'll
but,
have to come in front of us.
Absolutely.
It's a change of use.
yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So going from the previous use, the Verizon, to this use, that is not a change of use, it would be considered the same type of use, therefore they would not have to, is that the decision that was made?
Yes.
Okay.
Same use.
That's what I just wanted to understand. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Can I ask you to speak, since you've been at this, on the street, anecdotally, which is in a floodplain for 3 years, have you experienced flooding issues?
We've had no issues, knock on
Yeah.
wood. There's been,
It's
yeah.
fantastic to hear.
I mean, it gets a little high at times in the river in the back, but it's
Right.
never even reached the bank.
Okay. And it's informative as we look at the limitations of the lot. Go ahead, Chair.
What are you planning to do with lot 5?
That's the one next door there, right, Bob?
That's the smaller of the two lots?
That's the smaller of the two. I mean, we'd eventually like to, what we're hoping to do is put up a small shell, maybe medical shell building, a 5,000 square foot, something like that, 6,000 square foot building. That's something that we'll talk about in the future. That's what we plan to do there, make it a usable lot.
Okay.
So why aren't you making it a conforming lot?
Would,
You wanna speak on that?
oh, you're saying?
A conforming lot? Does it
I
conform
don't know
to
that Mr. Kohler has the
Oh, okay.
requisite
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
expertise to
that I don't.
answer that question, but if Mr. Lanzafama, I think will speak to the particulars of that, but certainly I think it is a lot closer to a conforming lot under the proposal than it is currently. And I think Mr. Lanzafama can speak more to the limitations, but the position of the existing structure, I believe, makes it impossible to get it to completely conform.
Where the building is. Yeah.
And to be completely honest with you, the space that's there right now, with the material and whatnot we have, I don't need all that space. It would just be dead space for us over at 40.
Lot for you.
Yeah.
Okay. That's an answer. The proposed storage area in the rear of lot 4, can you speak to that?
Yeah, it's just what we've had existing at 61, the same, it's just the material that we've had there, we're bringing over. We have reels of fiber optic cable. There's a high value on that. That's why, we'd like to get this done. So we have the gated yard just that we had before at 61. It's almost a mirror if you look at it. It's a mirror building to what we have over there now. It's the same basic layout. That's what we're going for. It's worked for us over there with the key card accesses and all that. So we know who comes in and out of the building. So that's what we're looking to do.
Great. Any further questions for this? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
And, our next witness will be Mr. Lanzafama, again with his 3 hats.
Thank you.
Good evening again. The property, as you know, is 40 East Willow, tax lot 4 in block 1004. It's located in the CMO zone. The property is located on the south side of East Willow Street, approximately 700 feet east of Main Street. That puts it just in the center of the area here, is where the particular lot is located.
Is this, Mr. Lanzafama, since you're referencing the exhibit, is this the same as what we have as?
This is exactly the same as what you have. This is the cover sheet on the preliminary and final site plan, as well as the minor subdivision application entitled 40 East Willow Street. It should have a revision date of 4/29/19, should be the date on your, in the title block. Okay?
Thank you.
Lot 5 currently has a frontage. The property is composed of the 2 lots, Lot 4 and Lot 5. Lot 5 has a frontage of 100 feet and is approximately 231 feet deep, has an area of 23,028 square feet. Lot 4 has a frontage of 300.75 feet and is about 258 feet deep and
So,
has a total land
Can I
area.
just interrupt you for a second?
Sure,
You-
yeah.
You referred to these exhibits with their latest revision date of 4/21,
429.
4/29.
Which is what we.
The planner's report refers to plans dated February 11.
That's this, I believe that's the date next to my signature. February 11, 2019.
Here,
Okay.
so with the revisions.
So were these the only plans that were submitted?
Yes.
Okay, all right, just want to make sure that the planner was looking at the right plans.
Yes.
That's all.
So we were talking about the two lots. This is Lot 5, the lot to the left or to the western side of the parcel. This is 100 foot of frontage, about 231 feet deep. The larger parcel is Lot 4, totaling 71,455 square feet. The topography of the site is such that it slopes back from East Willow Street to the south towards the back of the property. There's about a 4-foot grade differential from front to back. No excessive slopes, no wetlands, other than the environmental restriction of the floodplain. There's nothing else that would impact the subject property.
We marked that, is that A2, sheet A2?
This is
Or sheet 2?
sheet number 2.
All right, why don't we mark that A2?
You want to mark, these are what were submitted?
Yeah,
No.
well, we,
You want to mark them? Okay.
we
Wanna
do this
mark
all the
whole
time.
set?
We need to mark the exhibits because there's a record that's created. So you need to refer to a marked exhibit. So we'll use the same numbering that you have,
I appreciate
1
it.
through whatever, and we'll just put a prefix A to it and today's date. And if you can then refer to that in the record, that would make everything fit together.
A2 is the title and topographic survey
Thank you.
with a latest revision date of 4/29/19. And what I'm going to refer to next is a colorized version of sheet number 3 in your set of plans, which is the minor subdivision plat. And we'll mark that A3.
Thank you.
And what I'm marking, what I'm then going to refer to after the minor subdivision is the site plan, which is again a colorized version of the plan that you have before you, and that will be A4. And that's sheet number 4 in your set of plans. So the proposal this evening, first of all, is to subdivide Lot 5 and Lot 4, adjust the lot line between the two parcels. The existing lot line is located where I'm currently indicating with the highlighter, which provides the 100-foot width that currently exists. What we're doing is we're moving the lot line 11 plus feet to the east, thereby increasing the lot width and the frontage. We are then coming down, jogging to the east, and then going south and terminating at the current rear lot line. What that does is then provide a lot area of 30,000 square feet, which is the requirement for the CMO zone. That's the minimum lot area required. This would then reduce the existing Lot 4 from the 71,000 plus or minus square feet down to 64,483 square feet, which is still well in excess of the 30,000 square feet required by the ordinance. The ordinance also requires that lots have a lot width of 150 feet. So although we are increasing the width to 111.7 feet, or excuse me, 111.5 feet, we still are not making the 150 foot. If we would have to move the lot line almost immediately adjacent to the existing structure. And that would eliminate our ability to create a circulation pattern around the building with an entry driveway and an exit driveway. So the existing structure poses practical difficulties for us in meeting the standard of the 150 feet. In my opinion, the lot width variance that we're seeking as part of this application is a C2 variance that can be supported by the simple fact that we're reducing the extent of the existing nonconformity. We're bringing the lot up to standard with regard to lot area, and thereby making the lot a potential site for additional development along the street. As you heard from Mr. Kohler, he has indicated that we have plans in the works to provide an office building on this site. The width that we have provided for in this new configuration of the lots will accommodate that building. That building will be designed to comply with the side yard setbacks required within the zone. So in my opinion, the minor subdivision could be granted without any substantial detriment to the public good or the intent and purpose of your zone plan. There's real benefit gained in creating a lot that is compliant with regard to lot area. With regard to the site plan application, which I will now be referring to, it's been marked as Exhibit A4, which is a colorized version of your site plan drawing, sheet number 4 in the set of plans. And what that shows is the existing structure located up along East Willow Street. It's an 11,261 square foot structure. It's being renovated, as you may or may not be aware. As Mr. Kohler pointed out, he has obtained building permits to renovate the building, put a new facade on, change out the windows, put signage up, and reconfigure the interior. All of that work has been completed. He has a TCO for the property, for the building. Why he got a TCO is because he hasn't been able to complete the site improvements which require the approval of this board. So the proposal is to reconfigure the parking area in such a way to provide for 32 parking spaces. 25 are required based upon your ordinance criteria. There's 5,836 square feet of office space and 5,540 square feet of warehouse space. So based upon that breakdown and the requirement of 4 cars per 1,000 for the office and 1 car for every 5,000 square feet for the warehouse, we're required to have 25 parking spaces. So we have excess with regard to the parking, and it will function well for us. The back area of the property is designated for some vehicular storage. They have trucks that they utilize that they will have to store on site overnight, as well as some of their material is stored outside, just as it is at 61 East Willow Street. The underground detention system is located immediately behind the building. Roof leaders enter into that system, as well as some of the surface parking area drains into that system. The lot coverage is being reduced by 2,034 square feet. However, because we're reducing the lot size by a greater number, our coverage actually goes up percentage-wise from 80.8% to 86.38%, where 75% is permitted within the CMO zone. Again, I see this as a C2 variance. The fact that we are, in fact, reducing the amount of impervious coverage by over 2,000 square feet, the fact that there is a well-functioning stormwater management system already in place, the negative impacts associated typically with excessive impervious coverage are mitigated by the stormwater management system, as well as the added landscape elements. New landscaping is proposed all along East Willow Street, as well as to the rear of the building. As a matter of fact, if you went to the site, you'll see that much of the foundation plantings already have been put into place. There's a variety of shade and ornamental trees being proposed, as well as a variety of shrubs and other plant material. Lighting for the site, there will be new LED-type fixtures proposed within the parking lot and mounted on the building. There'll be 6 wall-mounted light fixtures, 3 pole-mounted. The pole-mounted fixtures will be 20 feet in height. The wall fixtures range from 9 to 16 feet in height. These will all be LED fixtures, which are the state-of-the-art. Allows us to become energy efficient and control any spillage or glare that might be emanating from the fixtures. I know in Ms. Davitt's memorandum, she notes that our average foot candle levels are 1.1, whereas the ordinance allows only 1 foot candle. We feel because of the material being stored on the site and the vehicles being stored in the parking area that we have some extraordinary situation where we need to have security, so we would like to have that additional lighting. We don't see that as a negative. We see that as really having a minimal impact. Since we're in a totally commercial zone surrounded by commercial uses, we don't see that as being a negative with regard to that requirement. In your planner's memo, he raises 2 issues with regard to parking in the front yard. We do have 1 parking space, 1 handicap parking space that's located in the front yard. That puts it in close proximity to the main entrance. There were existing parking spaces in the front yard already. We're pulling that back or reducing that existing nonconformity. Again, in my opinion, the C2 criteria falls into place, that it's a substantial detriment, not a substantial detriment, but a benefit with regard to the overall zone plan. We are also proposing a fence at the northeast corner of the building heading east towards the property line, security fencing. We will move that back slightly to get that behind the front yard setback, so it will be compliant. We just didn't pick up on that. So that'll slide back about 5 to 6 feet, so that'll be behind the required 24-foot setback that exists or is required in the zone. There were a few existing non-conforming conditions with regard to the building itself. The front yard setback, the building is currently at 18.82 feet. The requirement, as you know, is 24, as I just stated. There's no plan to change that. Nothing we're doing here will exacerbate that existing non-conforming condition. The floor area ratio is still compliant. 50% is permitted. Under the existing lot configuration, we were at 15.76%. Because of the reduction in the lot size, that percentage rose to 17.46%, but still well within the limitations of the ordinance. So overall, I see this as a significant improvement to the streetscape. I see this as an opportunity to repurpose this building for the Starcom use, which is almost identical to the Verizon use in its overall nature. The fact that it's fiber optics and really deals with telecommunications, which is exactly what Verizon had used the property for many, many years. We are in receipt of a number of memorandum from the forester as well as the township engineer. We have no problem in complying with those memos and providing them either revisions and or additional information as requested. Same thing goes for the fire chief and police. I believe I've addressed either through my testimony or Mr. Kohler's testimony, I think we've addressed all of the planner's comments with regard to what will the building be used for, the issues he raised with regard to the fence and the parking in the front yard. I have nothing further. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, I have some questions. and other members of the board may as well, but just, in light to the planner's report, regarding the material of the fencing, the proposed fencing.
Yes, it's a chain link fence with slats in it. It's exactly what they've employed at 61, so that you won't be able to see into the site from the street. We wanted to make that clear. The 6-foot-high fence, and there are operable gates, so there's sliding gates so the vehicles can come in and out easily.
Agreed, and you spoke to the need for security, and I can appreciate that, and also you gave your testimony with regards to the lighting. I don't know if you were able to speak to the hours the lighting is to be proposed, or if somebody else should speak to that.
I believe, I would have to defer
We
to
can
Michael
I can
Collier.
hold that question for later, because there may be other questions from the board for you. So, does anybody have any additional questions?
Just to go over the parking once more.
Certainly.
It was said before there are 40 employees per...
12.
Oh, 12. All right, never mind.
Go ahead, Ken.
Michael, you, in support of the C variance, you made the statement that the stormwater management system was adequate. Can you just elaborate a little more? Did you size the system for the site? Did you evaluate the system? Did you look at the system? Can you just elaborate a little bit more?
Sure. The system exists at the site. I
Right,
did
I
not, I
understand
did
that.
not do the original design.
Right, I understand that.
But I've inspected it over a period of time since we've been engaged to do work on the site. And I was there again today. After several days of heavy rain, the system was bone dry. There was no standing water in the system at all. So that's telling me that the system is functioning well. It's doing its job. It's allowing the surface runoff that's generated by the building in the parking area to be reabsorbed back into the ground, which is an ideal scenario. It's not a matter of just detaining the water. It's actually retaining the water and providing for groundwater recharge.
Thank you.
And again, I have a question, and I don't know if it's for you or for somebody else, but it's with regards to, you spoke about the pitch of the property being,
Correct.
down 4 feet towards the back.
Mhm.
And also at that rear is right where the storage area is my understanding that fiber optics will just be put on the ground at that location?
They're
Or
in
some sort of-
spools, large
Mhm.
spools, kind of like giant spools of thread
Yeah.
on those wooden spools, and they're placed on their side, so they can be stacked up so that they're not subject to flooding, to prevent it from being damaged by any kind of flood waters.
Hopefully nothing is subject.
Right,
But
right.
thank you. Go ahead.
So, do you think any way to reduce the impervious area here? Because your lot coverage is, as you said, 86%.
Mhm.
Is there any way that or do you think any possibility to reduce that?
Any further, we already reduced it by 2,000 square feet.
I
We
mean
tried-
to comply with the zoning ordinance, which is 75%.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to comply totally with the ordinance. There might be opportunities to remove small areas of pavement. Part of the area of the site, this tannish area in the southern end of the site is actually concrete with grass pavers. So we've already, years ago, they've already tried to address that situation by not just blacktopping area. We could possibly remove small areas of pavement along the perimeter as part of our application for the development of the other lot. So, but it wouldn't be a huge number. At best, we might be able to knock off another 400 or 500 square feet of asphalt. But there's no way I could get down to 75%.
How about using pervious pavers?
Excuse me?
Pervious pavers. Or pervious
Well,
surface?
that's what I said. That's what's
No, but
that's what's
also for
here.
the parking, I mean.
Well, then we would have to dig up the whole parking area. We'd rather not do that. But as part of the redevelopment, especially on the adjoining property to the west, we might be able to do some work along the westerly property line along this L-shaped area here and increase the setback in that area. And because we have our parking, we need our access. There's parking along the back of the building. There's parking for trucks. We do get large trucks that come in to do deliveries. They're flatbed type trucks, and they need the room to make this swing to come around the building. So we really need the paved area that you see on the site to really function well and efficiently. Could we squeeze out a little bit more? Sure.
Further questions for this witness? Okay,
So you had a question about the timing of the lights.
question about the timing of the lights, yes. Before you see, I don't know if we have any members from the public, but if anybody had any questions for, are you a member from the public? I'm sorry to call you out specifically, I just wanna make sure.
Actually, a neighbor on
Your
Willow Street.
Okay, I just wanna offer you the opportunity if you had any questions for the applicant or for the witness.
I have a question here. Sorry. I don't understand here the FIR. Here they show here 50 as a FIR. And I never heard about 50 for floor area ratio. Is this a mistake on the plans?
That's the permitted amount or the?
Yeah, the permitted.
Permitted amount.
Permitted, that's what he testified to,
50.
but he,
50.
but he,
I'll check
I
the
believe you said
ordinance.
50% and you testified that it was
Mhm.
15%.
FIR?
Yeah, maximum floor area ratio under that section of the ordinance is 50.
50.
50%.
50,
50%.
50.
And your current your proposed FAR,
Is compliant. Is that existing is 15.76%, proposed is 17.46%, and the only reason in the percentage increase is because we reduced the lot area.
right, okay.
Cause it's only one
Yeah.
floor.
Okay.
Thank you.
50%.
Would you like me to bring Mr. Kohler
Yeah, that'd be great.
back to the,
Come on down.
I'm back.
Regarding the lighting,
Okay, so.
what hours are you proposed to?
Oh, the hours, okay.
Sorry.
So, basically, our operation, the way that we work, we're pretty much a 24-hour, we're on call 24 hours a day, okay? And as far as the material in the back, I would like to keep that lit up all night if possible, as far as for the security purposes. If I don't think it would affect anything in the neighborhood there. It's an industrial area, it's commercial use, so I think that would only benefit the neighborhood by having the security back there.
Okay, thank you. I didn't wanna assume, I just
Yep,
wanted the
yep.
testimony to.
Very good. Yeah, the more light, the better back there for us.
Understood.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, sir, is that just the storage area that you're talking about, or are you talking about the entire
Just
rear?
the rear of the building, the rear of the property. Because our trucks are back there. We have bucket truck, utility trucks that have equipment on there, fiber optic splicing machines and whatnot. There's a lot of value in those trucks, and I just like the security is key for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
were there any other questions from the board or council?
Is that the conclusion of your testimony? Is that-
Unless there are any further questions, yes, ma'am.
Okay, great, thank you. Further questions from the board, any further questions? Okay, go ahead, Mark.
When I thought I heard, I heard you say you're gonna have a more robust planting plan. Than here in
More
according
robust
to
what? We can't hear you.
planting plan.
As it existed before they took possession of the property, the original property, the landscaping was in pretty poor condition. So what I was saying was that we were gonna enhance the streetscape through foundation plantings. If you look on the survey, there's basically no foundation plantings at all, other than a few evergreens that existed, as well as the lowland plains that exist along the street. So what we had done was we proposed on sheet number 6, I believe, or 7, is the landscaping plan. And there's a list of plant materials located on that sheet. It indicates that there's 1 London plane, 2 evergreens, and about 4 ornamental trees. And then there's a whole series of various shrub material, ranging from liriope to daylilies and hibiscus-type plants, all along the foundation. If you go to the building today, you'd actually see them. They actually planted all that material already.
The only comment I had is that it appears that you're going to reduce the, the DBH from 57 to basically 30 in the replacement. So it's basically a replacement.
Well, we talked to Mr. Doty about that when we did the work along the front. And originally, when we developed plans for this site, we had assumed that this application would be heard with the property to the west. So we've indicated to Tom that we're going to be coming in with a landscaping plan for the adjoining property and hopefully mitigate that so that we've increased the DBH overall on the two sites.
While you're here, Mr. Lonzafon, I just wanted to clarify, because you gave testimony that, you'll comply with everything in the reports, and so just looking through the township engineer's report, Martha's report, the final three upper bullets, I don't know if I have in front of you that I can share with you, they're comments, and so
Right.
you saying you're gonna comply with them, I just wanted to clarify what you
There
mean
were-
by that. Are you gonna change the design, or? are you
Right,
gonna change
the
what's
curb
the-
type inlets, will
First one
have
is
the
the
echo
type
curb
B.
plates. That's routine, that's pretty much standard. We have to do that these days based upon the DEP regulations for best management practices. We're gonna expose that manhole, it's partially paved over, we're gonna take care of that.
Okay,
And we're gonna change the specifications on the paving.
so you're going to revise the
Yes.
specifications? Okay, great,
Mhm.
just to make sure that revision is forthcoming. Thank you for
Thank you.
just clarifying.
Can I ask, when's Lot 5 expected to be developed?
I really can't,
Yeah, but I think doesn't bear on.
But we're giving it an extra square footage there. So now, because we're making a different subdivision, do all of the requirements that we're talking about for coverage and whatnot now apply to Lot 5 as well?
So as of now, lot 5 is, yes, just a surface lot.
Right.
If they are to
Build
to
something.
provide an application, yeah, we'd have to go to the boards as appropriate.
Okay.
Also, as the testimony today is if I'm incorrect, please correct me, but I believe the new lot width is gonna be 111 feet, which would still require a variance, because
Right.
it's not 150 feet. So it would still, any future development would have to get heard.
we'll see you again. And yes, that
That's the
does
same thing.
accurately restate the facts, thank you.
But it should be clear, just because it is a little confusing in light of the fact that there's not going to be there's not development being proposed on lot 5
As part of this
as part of this application, but a variance is being sought for the creation of lot 5 to have it as a conforming lot size-wise, 30,000 square feet, but a variance from the width. So if the board grants the variance from the width, when the applicant comes back to build something on there, that variance will already be pre-existing. You don't get another look at that. And I'm not suggesting otherwise, but I just want,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want
No, I
anyone
appreciate
to
that.
misunderstand that, you get a second bite at the apple on that,
Yeah,
but you
yeah.
don't.
You don't. And also the impervious, it's completely impervious, right? It's all paved, Lot 5.
As of
They're
now,
gonna
yes.
remove, yes,
President.
but they're gonna remove all of
The-
the,
Correct,
All of
this application contemplates that we would remove that surfacing, but at this moment, it is all or substantially all impervious.
Okay. And then when they build, they will be required to
to
provide,
comply with.
yes,
Right.
everything.
We
Those
actually-
variances, right.
I apologize. We actually noticed for coverage for Lot 5 in addition, in the event that the board felt because it was a projected outcome of this, that we would remove the surfacing, that as it stands today, that lot is fully surfaced. So there's that was in the documents that were submitted as well, just to reflect the current status quo.
Yeah.
And that's not something that we have to
No.
address today, because
It would be a condition that we would impose, because a condition to remove all of the impervious area on the newly created lot 5, so that therefore would be conforming in terms of coverage.
If the board would agree, we're not seeking the variance to maintain that coverage, we actually wish to remove it.
Yeah, it's here.
But it's simply, we're simply acknowledging that's how it exists today. The objective and the desired outcome would actually be to remove all of that surfacing, and leave you with a vacant lot from which then the slate can be clean and we can go forward separately.
Right. I mean, something I'm struggling with that I think you were touching on is that what is proposed is 86% covered. And yes, they are removing all the asphalt, but one day it probably won't be 0% coverage.
Exactly.
And that once we, if I'm correct, once we approve tonight, that if any application going forward would be permitted up to 75%.
That is correct. On that lot.
With no, it's not.
They're not gonna
but
take
what you
into
did at
consideration.
5,
Yeah.
once we approve tonight,
Right.
this is the opportunity to speak of coverage at.
Well, it's on lot 4. On lot 5, they're gonna remove all the coverage, so that it will
Go
be,
drive and flip.
I think, right?
Okay.
Lot 5 is the left.
Is the small one.
Lot 5 is the smaller lot, correct?
Yes. So that, as a result, if the board approves it and we impose a condition consistent with the applicant's request that all of the impervious area on the smaller lot 5 be removed, it will have all pervious area on it, and then when the applicant comes in to do something on that, they will have to propose what they propose. They will be limited to the 75%
Sure.
on that
Not
lot
that lot of stuff.
5.
Yes.
Right, and if they want to do 80%, they need to seek a variance to do that.
Just see variance.
And that's your C variance. Okay.
So-
Thank you for bearing with us as we discuss
Absolutely.
that. Further questions? Any other comments or considerations? Go
I
ahead.
have a comment. I'm struggling with the concept that they're asking us to allow them to have a continuing undersized lot, or not undersized, but non-conforming
Right.
lot, so that they are essentially, but to allow them to create what I would consider in their minds a more marketable lot, on the one hand, but not to say to them, hey, but your impervious coverage now, the percentage goes up substantially, but they're saying, don't hold that against us because we've really reduced the coverage. So you can't have it both ways, in my opinion.
I'm similarly struggling with that
Yeah.
concept,
That to
yes.
me is,
And I think that was the why that, Jorge was
Yeah.
asking,
right,
what can you do better than 86?
right,
You know,
exactly.
when
And
the-
I think that, it's coming to us grabbing with two hands. And that's, I have a problem with that part of the application. I have a problem allowing us to continue a non-conforming lot, continuing the creation of a non-conforming lot, but I can live with it considering the size. But I have a real problem with the increased percentage on the one hand, and also your contention that we should hold it against the applicant.
Right. I will say, I appreciate the landscaping at the front, the streetscape is improving. We're still going a little bit the wrong direction in terms of that percentage, and that is a struggle, because, yeah, you're digging up the asphalt, but maybe in a year from now or 2 years from now, that won't be the case.
And that's not this lot anymore.
And that's not to be decided on anymore. So, Mr. Lanzafama was saying, maybe I could get a little, some things in. I don't know if you're prepared to provide any further detail or clarification on what that could be.
Well, I think we also have to take into account the fact that all of the impervious area on the adjoining lot is being removed as well. So we're seeing a substantial amount of impervious area coming off. When we come in with the application for development on the new lot we've just created, we will need to comply with the 75% coverage,
Right.
or request a variance, as your attorney pointed out. So if you look at the redevelopment of the property in total, you're going to see a significant reduction in impervious area overall. And the fact that the site has such a well-functioning subsurface detention system, I think is an important element that you need to take into account. It's not like other areas of the township in which this runoff just goes out into the collection system, into the rivers, and causes flooding. That's not the case here. The case here is one where you're basically controlling this excess impervious area which generates additional runoff on your own site, on our own site. We are adding some landscaping. We'll try and create more opportunities. As I stated, there's the possibility of some opportunity along this westerly boundary line in which we could pull the curb into the parking area and storage area a little bit more so that we can create more of a landscape strip between the potential development on the adjoining lot 5 and lot 4. So I think you're seeing some real significant benefits to allowing us to move forward with this application and eventually with the redevelopment of the adjoining lot. We are bringing the lot into compliance with regard to area, which I think is something that you need to consider in your deliberations.
Do you know what the total coverage would be if the new lot would be 75%?
The new lot we're creating, I should have known that, is 30,000 square feet. So we take 0.75 times plus what we have currently, which would be 55,703. And then we take the two land areas. So we get 55.
Yeah, like currently they do have some grass in there. Like a little, where, you can't see any of it. They broke it up a little bit. Yeah, a little bit, little. The second page.
The total coverage, if the new lot were compliant at 75%, the total new coverage, and we left the site just as it is as we're proposing this evening. The new lot coverage would total 82.8%.
And what is it currently as the site is 80?
The entire property, if you take
The entire property.
the entire site, is at 80.8%.
That includes both, does that include both lots?
Both lots.
4 and 5.
No, I'm sorry, that does not include both lots. That is only on, that is only on lot 5, that number. Or, excuse me, lot 4. I don't know if I have, you don't happen to have, see, I didn't bring the stuff for lot 5. I don't have the existing coverage. I don't know what the existing coverage is on the combined two parcels. Unless you have it.
As a matter of fact, I do.
They must be on the chart.
Lot coverage.
Something between 80, it's like 84, 83. No, existing, you're right, 'cause it doesn't, we don't have existing lot 5.
The existing lot coverage in total is 86.6%
On both lots?
on both lots. If you combine both lots currently, the existing
So-
coverage
so
and the
it's
existing,
86.
86.6%.
No, it's still 86.
No, but
So
yes,
we're coming, so
when
we
you
would be
combine it
coming
with
down
the
to
combined.
82.8%.
Existing and the
So you're seeing a 3.8% reduction in impervious area overall. That's assuming that we're at 75% on the other lot, and we don't
yeah, keep
request a
to it.
variance for that. I don't know if that helps. And that's not to say we won't take a second look at the site to see if there's opportunities. I just talked to my client, you know, there's a barrier here that separates the storage area from the parking area. We might be able to put a grass strip right down the middle here and put some plantings in. So there's an opportunity there as well as. And we can bring that to you as part of our submission for the adjoining lot when we come back.
Well,
The purple,
This is the other.
sorry, the purple over
Yeah.
there and here is the proposed paver area. Is
Say
that
again?
what- Sorry,
Purple,
the
proposed.
purple, sorry, I can't,
This area
yeah,
here
the purple.
is the paver area behind the.
And are those pavers pervious pavers? Is there something can you create something here that, can you use a material there that would be pervious? I'm not sure what the
Well,
purpose of
they're
that spot is for.
Set in sand, so you gap them a little bit, so you would get some groundwater absorption through that area, possibly. But I think the better bet and more bang for your buck is probably to create a wider grass strip between the two adjoining properties, as well as introduce a grass strip through the middle of the site. I would think that would be the way to go. That's gonna give you the ability of not only reducing the amount of impervious coverage, but giving you some landscape opportunities as well.
And granted, landscape behind a building, behind a fence in this
Yeah,
neighborhood,
but
we
it's still,
understand, but I
it
think
still
what
reduces
we're
the heat,
struggling with
the
is
heat sink on the
is
pavement.
Is exactly that. You're saying we can take a look at it, we can consider
Well,
it, I wanna,
Let's commit to certain numbers.
let's commit, yeah, let's talk.
Can I ask you a question, Tim?
Absolutely.
What about on that side, do all those parking spaces need to be there?
These parking spaces.
Can you keep the handicap spaces and then eliminate some of the ones for further down?
No, we need the parking spaces through here. We have a gate here, because these are visitor spots for people that are coming, for meetings and what have you, as Mike pointed out. This is for, our vehicles and for employees.
Mr. Lansdowne, you have 7 extra parking spaces. You need 25, according to the calculations. You have 32.
Correct.
Following up on that same thought line, is there a way to eliminate the 7 additional parking spaces? And I mean, those are
Well, we have.
18
we
by
have
times
two
360
handicap-
square feet of parking space.
We have, 6 of those spaces are in front of the gate. 6 of the spaces are
Okay.
for visitors
Understood.
and for handicap.
Right.
So the rest we felt we would need for employees and for our trucks.
So you think you'd need 32, the area for 32 spaces, even though you're only required of 25?
I would like to leave all 32 parking
I-
spaces.
I just put it out there for consideration.
Is an area along, and I'm gonna mark on exhibit A4, which is the rendered site plan. We could increase the separation between the parking areas and create a 6-foot wide grass strip that runs to the south and then curves around, following the new lot line, parallel to the new lot line, 6 feet off. And then again, coming back down along the lot, again, keeping it 6 feet off the lot line. We could then create a landscape island that's 10 feet wide and encompasses the lighting fixtures and also allows us to introduce some landscaping. So that is 125 feet by 10. So that's, you know, a significant amount of area. This would be roughly 45, 50, 95. That would be 65 times 6. 95, 65, 6 times, and 125 times 10. So we could reduce the amount of impervious area on the site by another 2,200 square feet and still allow the site to function well for us. And it'll give us the opportunity to provide some increased landscaping.
I like that.
Did I miss something?
Yeah,
At
how did you get
1250
2200?
plus 390?
Okay, about
No.
1,500. Yeah.
Did I say 390? I meant,
Well, you said
I-
390, but
Well-
you may not have meant 390.
no, it was more than that. It was,
125 by 10.
And 65 by 6.
Yeah,
This is-
he added
this is four- I said 45, another 45, and 90.
90,
And 90 plus 60, 70, so 160.
160 times 6.
Ah.
Okay.
160, let's see if I did my math right here.
That's nice.
Plus the
Six,
1250, yeah, 2210
Right,
is what I
that's-
came up with.
yep.
So say 2,200 square feet for,
With you now.
you'll give me 10, right?
We'll talk about it.
Okay.
So
Thank
now
you.
that will, excuse me, that will, since you have your calculator out,
Okay.
what will that reduce the?
Let's see, what does that do for us
impervious
as far as our coverage? So our coverage goes from 55,703 to 53,493, divided by 64,483, brings us down to 83%.
From 86.
From 86.38.
And what is it currently on this lot?
On this lot, currently, it's
80%.
80.8. That's when it was the full 7,100 square, or 71,000 square feet plus. But between the two lots, we were talking about 86.6%. So you're looking at a 3.6% reduction. Well, it'd be even further if we went down to
Thank you.
75%.
So, you're willing to, that's a
We
change that
will
you're willing
reduce
to-
the impervious coverage by an additional 2,200 square feet, bringing our allowable, or our proposed lot coverage to 83%.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Feels like we're taking progress.
Give and take.
Appreciate that. Yeah. Any further questions? Go ahead, Mark.
Just a quick one, I'm just looking at your very brief paragraph of the type of soils here, and it says that, it's been identified by NRCS as a soil group C, in my recollection. Soil group C is, you know, is 20 and 40% clay, with possibly other euphorbiums or urban soil soils.
Mhm.
Did I hear you say that you're willing to replace that with sandy substrate to increase, excuse me, to increase infiltration?
No, I didn't say that.
But I heard you say.
No, I'm saying the existing detention system is in a very sandy material, and it's percolating very, very rapidly, and it's evacuating in a very quick response to every storm that we've had. Every time I've inspected it, it's bone dry.
But if you put a grass strip or some other vegetation,
Whenever we, yes, when we replant, when we remove the asphalt and prepare the beds for planting, yes, we would do a sand topsoil mix. Yes, definitely.
Okay, thank you. We'll open it up to the public for comments. Okay, option. So let's, sorry, are you approaching? Did you? Okay,
Unless, if there are no further questions, I think we've worked it out.
great, thank you.
Thank you.
So let's confirm what we heard, just to make sure you have all the appropriate, I think there's only 1 or 2 conditions.
Yeah, well, the application is for a minor subdivision to adjust the lot lines between lots 4 and 5 to create a size conforming lot 5. They seek multiple variances, one for lot 5 for a lot width of 111 point whatever feet versus the 150 that are required. For 111.5 feet versus 150 that are required. That's the variance they're seeking for lot 5, which is the smaller lot that they are creating. It's larger than what it is now, but it's still the smaller of the
Reducing the
two
extent
lots.
of the non-conforming.
They're reducing the extent of the deviation. They also seek a preliminary and final site plan approval for improvements on the newly created or the newly configured Lot 4, which contains the existing building. They're seeking a number of variances in conjunction with that reconfigured Lot 5. Lot 4, sorry. One of them, as a result of the conversation that we just had, would be a variance for lot coverage of an aggregate 83% versus 75% as required under our ordinances. They're seeking a variance to allow one parking space in the front yard. It would be the ADA compliant space. They've withdrawn the variance for the fence in the front yard by agreeing to move that back on revised plans to be out of the front yard. I think there was one more variance, but I missed it. Now, those are the only variances I had there. We've granted the waiver from the EIS. The conditions, in addition to the usual conditions that we impose, the standard conditions, would be that they would revise the plans to conform with any approvals that the board gives. They would comply with all of the reports that have been submitted by the various boards and agencies. All impervious coverage would be removed from the newly configured Lot 5. That's it.
Just that, that's all.
That's all I have.
Thank you. With that said, do we have a motion to approve the application with Ed's noted variances?
I will move that motion.
Do we have a second?
No second.
Thank
I just want to say to Mr. Kohler, you've been a very good neighbor, and I wish you the best at your new site. I vote yes.
Elaine Becker,
Yes.
Cheryl Bernstein. Yes. Diane Aglow.
Yes.
Gaston Halbert,
Yes.
Jorge Petro,
Yes.
Mark Matzel,
Yes.
Miriam Salerno,
Yes.
that's all.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We do have some more orders of business, so if you
Thank you very
take
much.
advantage of the opportunity. If somebody wanted to go grab Joe, I believe he's sitting out there. We can take a 2-minute break, yeah, and Joe! We'll take 2 minutes as they clear and reconvene. Joe goes to the doctor across the street. Concerned about a conflict of interest. Such a sweet guy. By the letter of the law.
Mr. Steinberg, nice to see you.
Good evening.
There are so many unique failures
Somehow losing a space or here or there, just to
This is the,
get something, preferably in the front too, you know, but not in the back or whatever.
This does not have lighting. You should cross it off from a different version. Oh, here it is.
this change here
How did it go last night?
is critical. This makes no
The introduction of these ordinances.
Fine.
No big deal.
Totally non-conforming.
It was a non-issue.
Well, when you're just introducing them, there's really no discussion.
Yeah,
Discussion.
but I didn't know if
Not
people
They
in
were
the know
discussed
came.
the prior meeting, so last night they were introduced, they voted
It was fine.
unanimous to put them on for a
Move
second
it forward,
reading,
okay.
and it's really,
Thanks,
they're not
good
very
night.
controversial at all, I don't think.
No, it's defining things.
Yeah, I mean, we actually had a big discussion at the prior meeting, we had a long discussion about it, and the language, and we made some changes. So this week, everything was done, so we do it as new business, and then we discuss it as new business, and then we
And then the
introduce it,
subsequent, yeah.
right.
I know,
We
but
don't
online,
just-
I was looking at the video, they're a backlog, so you only have like April videos posted or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so like I was thinking, oh, I'd go look and see, but
Yeah, no,
not
so
there yet.
they're really like not controversial at all.
now,
Good.
We can make
I heard we're getting a turf field.
now the question is,
I am so excited. It's great.
We are
So we're
where,
like on
At the library field.
really
Is
tight
it paper mill or library?
Library.
Library.
Well, that's the paper mill.
There's paper mill and then library. I don't know, for lacrosse, they break it up. They call one area the paper mill. Are they doing the whole thing? So there's paper mill as like,
like next to the
Like
paper
next
mill,
to paper,
and then by down by the library, there's
and
like
then
a
there's
little
library
circle.
field. Well, you go over the little walkway and then that part is paper mill
The
field.
one close to the paper mill, that's the
And
big
then
one.
library field is the smaller one.
So like that's more like a baseball field.
They play lacrosse, we do lacrosse
actually
games there
don't
too.
I don't think that Monroe paper mill was even under discussion.
Right, so it's just library
I
field.
guess it's a library field, I don't know, I've always referred to it all as library field, but what do I know? I'm old.
All I know is what the lacrosse coaches tell us to call it, so I don't think it's not like an official term, but there's paper mill field.
I think it's then it would be the library.
Just the library field, that smaller section.
I get, you know what, I don't know.
Okay, I
Does
like
Mark know that?
anything.
He'd be excited.
It's
He loves turf field.
But it's
It's
a mud
because
pit.
we're on a really, really tight time frame, so
Yeah.
they
Oh,
want
to do it.
They wanna have it done by soccer
whether they.
No, they're not gonna be able to do that, because it has to go out to bid, and they still haven't done the specs, and they have to do all that
So how
stuff.
tight
And
is
we still have to vote on it, we only
Yeah.
have one meeting in July and one in August, so we're gonna do a special, we're gonna do the introduction.
Yeah.
In July, and do a special meeting for the.
Current and our previous mayor.
Meeting, so we can.
Not you. Your neighbor mayors. Really, isn't the mayors though?
Vote to send it out to bid.
Did you realize that
Send it out to bid,
And
and then I
really
guess
well
in
represented
September,
here.
hopefully
Yeah, we
get our
got
bids
mayor's
back.
You
office.
are
We
renewing
have it done by the end of the calendar year.
They want to
Yeah,
have it
Christmas in
done.
June.
See his tag?
I called,
Hi.
I called Liz the other day, I just told this to Ed. I called Liz the
I actually
other
have
day and told her that this sentence is wrong. Changes of tenancy shall be site plan exempt. Sometimes they are site plan exempt and sometimes they're not, depending on whether or not there's a change of use. So I told her that the words except as otherwise provided in this section have got to be added to that. Now, whether, well, she hasn't really worked on this.
Okay.
So she was just taking it all down. Now, whether the change was made before last night's first reading or not, I don't know. But I just mentioned it to Ed, and he said we can make a recommendation that
Can they incorporate it before their second reading? Or do they?
He said, yes, they can, as long as it doesn't materially change the ordinance. I gave her a couple of other minor changes, but this was the critical, yeah.
Because you're,
It's wrong. Changes of tenancy shall be site plan exempt.
it means anytime there's a,
Yeah,
anytime
exactly,
the
which
tenant
is not true.
No, that's not the point of the whole rest of it.
Exactly.
Thank you. Will you bring that up?
I will.
I knew it.
You knew it.
It's good to see you. All right.
How are you?
All right, thank you.
Haven't seen you for so
Break.
long.
I'm gonna go yell.
Yes,
I
we
wondered
must,
if
we
that
must.
woman who walks around the cage, the one who's mentally got a
Jill.
problem. Is that her name?
Jill, yes.
I saw
Jill
her,
Hanauer.
that's her name? I saw her
Lives on
walking
Winding Way.
down, I saw her walking down the divider between, on Marsh
They
Avenue.
took her license away, so she's been walking around.
She's walking down the middle of the, yeah, I know. And I'm thinking to myself,
She does seem to
that
be-
woman is gonna get killed.
Well, that's possible, I guess. You should see the way she would drive sometimes. I've seen her play, what do you call it, driver going around the parking lot. She would go around the back and then she'd cut across the bank and she'd zoom around, just for, I don't know, a little thrill, I guess.
I wonder if she's related to there was a Hanauer family in Essex County. I don't remember.
I went to high school with Sandra Hanauer, who was a cousin of hers, who's over in South Orange. But I don't know who else would still be around here
Yeah, I'm
anyway.
trying to remember who else
Hanauer is not that common a name.
No, it isn't. But there was they were in real estate.
I don't know. She was always with her mother, and then her mother died, and she will not give up the house. And it's underwater now, too. I don't know what the heck is going on with her. I don't know how she's still there. But I think she has a brother, and she won't do anything they want her to do.
Wow.
And she has cats. And she goes to the store, and she picks up cartons, and she goes to ShopRite, too.
I've been told
There we go. Okay.
by people at King's that they have rejected.
Can I do my own?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm glad you.
He's talking about sales
great.
at King's.
Now we're gonna bring our meeting back.
That wasn't what I was talking
Welcome back for the new business portion of our meeting. Good evening. Thank you. Okay. So we have two items that we're going to discuss for forthcoming. The first is the 2018 Zoning Board of Adjustments Annual Report. They had provided it to us mostly as a courtesy for our review. We've had some back and forth in terms of the legality of whether the planning board is required or not required to approve the plan. And I don't know if you want to recap it for everyone's
Yeah, well, very
benefit,
briefly, the statute provides that annually the Board of Adjustment is to issue a report to the Township Committee and to the Planning Board with regard to their applications that they've had over the last year, review them numerically or mathematically and categorize them and make any recommendations as to whether ordinances should be revised or whether ordinances should be considered to be revised based upon the variances that were granted. It is issued to the Planning Board and to the Township Committee. There's, the statute then ends right there. It just, it does not have any next steps, so to speak. So some planning boards get it, say thank you very much, and put it in the circular file. Others read it and review it and make recommendations. Others read it and comment on it, but it never goes any further. But the bottom line is that it's in the hands of the Township Committee because they are the ones who would have to consider amendments to ordinances that would eliminate or modify the scope of variances that the Board of Adjustment would be considering. And we get the opportunity to look at those ordinances, as we will tonight, after the Township Committee introduces them and before they adopt them. So we do have a role in it once the Township Committee decides to move forward. But there's certainly nothing wrong in discussing it, and you know, if we have a position, a consensus, I'm sure the Township Committee would welcome our thoughts.
Absolutely. So we were sent this. So with that, hopefully we've had an opportunity. I know it was distributed maybe back in April. or possibly earlier. It has not yet gone to the township committee because it has been awaiting feedback
No,
from
it
us, or
should be
has it
there.
as at the township committee? Okay,
It should be there.
but we still have the opportunity to,
Sure.
to give it, you know, our quote-unquote blessing of, you know, we're comfortable with this, or if there's any items that you wanted to bring up or discuss or provide feedback. So, with that, I open it up for any items of discussion, questions. I guess we have the benefit of asking questions because Joe sits on our board as well. And we can get real-time answers if there are any issues or
Just a comment or two that I would throw in, and that is that the Township Committee has over the years, and this is covered, I think, on, these are not numbered pages, but the second page, paragraph 3, or section 3, that says recommended zoning changes and amendments. There are 5 that are listed there at the top of the page that the Township Committee has dealt with over the years. And the zoning board, there are 4, yeah, I
at
counted.
the beginning of section 3.
Yeah, I'm not counting well. 4. And the zoning board is very pleased that those particular ones have been dealt with. One that has come up a lot, and I don't know the extent to which it is covered in this, I think it is, I'd have to find it for you. But one of the things that we're particularly concerned with, there's a provision in the zoning ordinance that says that when you're dealing with a corner lot, the setback for accessory uses is 2 times the normal setback. Well, many applicants come before us and say, we only have a lot that's 30 feet wide or 35 feet wide or 40 feet wide, and if we're 50 feet wide, and if you double the setback to 80 feet, we would have to put our swimming pool or patio, or whatever it is, on our neighbor's property, because we...
Or in the street.
Yeah, we're in the street, right, exactly. So I think that that's an important one for the Township Committee to get its arms around, and probably what they want to do is maybe designate the setback as a certain percentage of the lot from each street, as opposed to twice 40, which is 80 in every case. That's one that has come up. I don't know whether a lot of them have come up in this particular year that's covered by this report, but we have mentioned that in prior years, and we mentioned it again in our report this time. But I looked at the proposed ordinance that we are going to be discussing next, and some of the recommendations of the zoning board have been covered in this proposed ordinance. So
Regarding definitions
I
and
think
whatnot.
we'll have a different report next year, hopefully.
Good. So with that said, if there are further questions or comments, if not, I think,
No, I have a
oh,
comment.
go ahead, okay,
Yeah,
please.
I just, I'm going to, I wanna extend Joe's conversation because I think it's important, particularly in the zoning areas there where smaller lots exist, not only on corner lots, but smaller lots. And I think that you've addressed that partially on the last page of your report, and I appreciate this, and I wanted to recommend that hopefully the township will take a hard look at particularly those areas in Wyoming and South Mountain where smaller lots exist and the restrictions are excessive. And basically every time a resident wants to do anything, you know, they would have to basically come in front of the Board of Adjustment, and that, you know, dealing with, front yard setbacks, side yard setbacks, just, they're small lots, and I think we need to take I would hope that the township would take another look at the opportunity of reducing the restrictions that allow for things like decks and setbacks and which would minimize the need to go in front of the Board of Adjustment. Right now, if you do anything basically in the South Mountain area or the Wyoming area, you are destined for the Board of Adjustment. So I would hope that the township would take another look at that and see if there was any way that we could reduce the need to go to the Board of Adjustment on basically everything.
Excuse me, wait, Elaine, I just want to tap on, but you're not talking about like additions and knockdown houses which are being overbuilt in South Mountain section? Okay,
No,
because that's something we definitely want to address.
No, that's
Yeah,
different.
okay,
That's
you're talking about
different.
just a patio or a
I'm talking
deck.
patio, deck, you know, we're in a situation where you have most of the houses that already exceed the setbacks, okay? So if you have a house, in particular, the house line, which you would just want to extend vertically, okay, you would have to essentially go to the Board of Adjustment because you are exacerbating the existing exceedance of a setback. I'm not so sure that's absolutely necessary. So I think that some of this is overly restrictive and needs to be looked at again. I'm sorry, you were.
No, I think when you talk about accessory structures, I agree with
Yeah.
you. When you talk about an existing house that has a non-conforming setback, I think by extending it vertically, it absolutely should be heard by the board.
Yeah, well, I
Well,
think I'm gonna put that in front of the township
Yeah.
committee, let them debate that, because I don't necessarily agree, but that's okay. You know, I think there's ways to take a look at, the need, particularly if none of the other houses are, you know, it doesn't exceed that, you know, the distance with respect to the other houses along on the street, and if it's if there's consistency, I'm not sure that's absolutely necessary. I throw that out there for discussion, so.
I would like to say, I don't think neighbors would agree with you if someone's gonna put a topper on their house and it exceeds the height of their neighborhood, in the neighbors. I think that should definitely go before the board.
But that's not what I'm saying.
What are you saying?
What I'm saying
You're not following.
you're staying within the height
Okay.
limitation. You basically have a room,
Mhm.
okay, that the building line is at a point that exceeds the setback,
Mhm.
okay, your front yard setback, all right? And all you wanna do is build up. Now, I'm not saying you exceed the building height
Oh, I'm
limitation.
sorry, okay.
Stay within the building heights. But if you wanna put anything on top of that portion of your property, it would require you to go in front of Joe's board, okay? And as Eileen just said, she thinks that that's still necessary. I don't think it's absolutely necessary. I think it's one of the restrictions that are imposed on smaller properties that I think we need to take a look at and think about.
I can tell you that we have had cases like that very recently.
Oh, yeah, I went in front of you too, by the way, yeah.
Very recently, and neighbors have been concerned with that second floor if, for example, on the street, the other houses are all one story. They all you may be correct, that they all violate the front yard setback. But when you put a second floor on, that's a whole new ball of wax.
Yeah.
Because you could block sun, light, air
Okay.
to neighbors.
But you could probably move it back 2 or 3 feet, Joe, and put it on anyways.
I don't know how you cover that in an ordinance, that's the problem.
There
I
is
mean,
a
in it-
sec-
Well, there's the
second
setback.
story
Yeah,
setback also.
yeah, that second story setback.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, you know, it's not for debate. If the township committee wants to bring it up and wants to look at it, I throw it out there as an extension of what Joe has put in this report. I think it's a very good report. I do think there are restrictions. I think the accessory use restriction in the smaller lots needs to be taken a look at. It's very hard to get a deck extension, particularly if you're on two front, you know, if you have a corner lot and you have, so I think that we need to take a hard look in those two areas. I think that what I see that you're doing tonight with respect to the zoning is making it easier when you have like change of use. I think we need to apply the same type of thinking in these areas that have smaller lots, so that it's not always absolutely necessary to go in front of a board, and it makes people think twice.
So in other words, extend this concept of making it easier for our businesses to our residents as well.
I don't think that's inconsistent with what they're saying. I think you're stressing that point and
Yeah.
adding a little bit to it. Yeah. Elaine, did you have a comment before? Sorry.
I was going to ask about the size of the small lots. A lot of them are 50-foot lots, and then the zoning was enlarged to 60-foot lots. So it's probably those 50-foot lots which are as constrained as more constrained than any other.
There's a lot of them.
And I didn't know, I mean, you can't really say, well, we'll apply this to the 50-foot lots, but not the
Right.
60.
Well, I didn't see
You have
that.
to be consistent with the whole zone.
Yeah, but I mean,
would think.
why anybody in a neighborhood of 50-foot lots decided that the lot should be 60-foot is mind-boggling in and of itself. But, you know, was well before us.
Well, we're not making
Right,
those
we're not
specific
making those
recommendations,
decisions
but
now.
yeah.
This is
But the
also
rec-
Glenwood in addition to, and there's some in
Understood.
Brookhaven also. There are 3 lots in Brookhaven which are only 50 feet wide, and now they're building something right now that's going very
Well, we're
high and very
actually-
much in the back, and people are a little nervous about that because it's a little,
Understood, which is
overdone
why
because
we
it's
may
a
not
small
be
lot.
able to do that with respect to building or additions, but with respect to a patio or people's,
Right.
you know, building something for their enjoyment of their outdoor space,
sure.
you know, that it may be totally appropriate, so, but that's for
I don't
another day.
dispute any of
Yeah.
that.
Alright. So, we don't need to take a roll call, but we would just do sort of an all in favor of, I think, recommending this to the township committee. Yeah, they're
Right.
yeah.
You just need to review it and see, and I guess as the year goes on, if you see, you know, recommendations that we made, the board of adjustment, made, the planning board, or the township committee to, you know, encourage the township committee to perhaps do ordinance changes that might reflect some of these.
Right, it's so that we're aware of where the zoning board is going. Are you comfortable with that, or are you looking for more of a?
Whatever council says
Well,
we're supposed
council
to.
set the
He's-
stage and said there is
he's
no.
He's absolutely right that
There's
that
no.
the statute just stops.
Right.
And it doesn't say what we're supposed to do as a planning board. I think it's very, very important in light of what some of the comments that have been made to read very carefully the last paragraph of this report, which I think is really critical.
Right.
There's a sense, and I got the sense during the public meetings that we had on the master plan, there were a number of people, a couple at least, who said vocally during the course of those meetings that the zoning board just, you know, is out of control. They give whatever people ask for. I think you really have to read that last paragraph in the report. We don't turn down many applications. We do occasionally, but many, many of them are approved when the architect or the lawyer or the applicant sits there and says, we're gonna get turned down tonight. Can we have an adjournment? Then they come back 2 months later with a whole cut-down plan. And that's been happening all the time for the last 15 years that I've been on the board.
But you don't make that distinction that this is a, they've returned with.
Yeah, we don't make that distinction
Right.
there, but we made it in the last paragraph. of
Right,
our
that's what
report.
I saw.
Yeah.
Right, but you can't tell, there's no asterisks
There's
that
no
they've come
asterisk
back
that
and
they came
changed,
back.
yeah.
Yeah.
And similarly, we saw changes made to the application on the spot tonight, so
Right.
that it would garner favor, as it were. And then that's the wheels of justice. So, thank you, Joe, for preparing this
Squeaky
in
wheel
depth
of
and sharing
justice.
with us.
Thank you, Joe. Nice job.
With no further
Yeah,
requirement or I think I think there's general support and appreciation. I'm speaking on my behalf, but I'm also reflecting on what we heard. I think it's important to take what we read and what you prepared, and I think transition to look at the new development regulation ordinance amendment. So I'm comfortable moving off of that topic of business. There were 4 listed, as you see. 1 is struck from tonight's agenda. It's forthcoming, the section 512 on lighting. But what we have received, we received it earlier this week, maybe last week. Section 301, the definitions, the parking, 607.2, and then a few section 606 regarding the B2, 3, 4, and CMO zone proposed ordinance changes. This had its first reading. Cheryl was just recapping for me last night, following an earlier meeting at which it was discussed among the township committee. And so, Joe, I know you had one minor.
It's not a minor, it's a major.
Minor
thing.
wording with major impact.
Yes.
How about that?
If you look at section 301, it's on page 2, 301.60, subsection C.
D.
I'm sorry, I'll go down to D. At the end of the changes of tenancy shall be site plan exempt, period. That is not so.
I agree.
It is, sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. You have to read this whole section, and you see very quickly that when you read it, change of tenancy, for example, where there is a change of use, and that change of use comes under one of the changes that are deemed to be non-site plan exempt. You can't have a sentence that says all changes of tenancy are site plan exempt. Doesn't make any sense. Now, for the benefit of those of you on the board, I saw this before last night's meeting of the Township Committee, and I called the planner, who presumably prepared this. He was on the phone, but I talked to his assistant, who has appeared here in the township on many occasions, and I gave her that change and a couple of other less important ones. Now, whether that change made it into the draft before last night, I called the day before yesterday, so I gave them a day to, turn up at the Township Committee last night, and I suggested a change in that sentence. I added the words, after changes of tenancy shall be site plan exempt, I added comma, except as otherwise provided in this section, which I think solves the problem. I don't know whether that made it into last night's meeting. But
you're right.
this, as it's written, is,
Negating the section.
doesn't cut it, so.
Right.
That's, again, I don't know what we're supposed to, what if anything we're supposed to do.
You feel in the
with
dark?
that.
Somebody's back there.
You can go out there and walk around, there you go.
No, we're in the dark.
Keep walking.
You're invisible.
You have to come to this side now.
Somebody's gotta move over there. Mark, we're gonna go.
Can you stand up? Thank you. Ay, ay, ay.
There you go.
Thank you, Tracy.
Ah, there you go.
So, yeah.
I don't know, Ed, what we're supposed to do with that, but
Well, the referral of an ordinance to the planning board, as I said earlier, is a statutory requirement. The township committee, after introduction, must send the ordinances to the planning board. The planning board has a 45-day time period within which to act. The governing body cannot consider adoption of this ordinance until the expiration of that 35 days, or their receipt of a report from the planning board. The planning board's report looks at the ordinance and sees if there's any inconsistencies with the master plan, because all land use ordinances or land development ordinances are supposed to be consistent with the master plan. And if they are not consistent with the master plan, it requires a higher vote from the township committee on final adoption to adopt it, because it is inconsistent. So we have to first make the determination as to whether it is consistent with the master plan. And the second thing that we can do is to provide any recommendations to the township committee with regard to the ordinance that they've presented to us. This, I submit, would be one of those kinds of recommendations that is very specific to add to subsection D of section 301.60, the following language. And that memo or letter or email can be sent from the planning board administrator to the township clerk, and then that will be presented to the township committee. Just as an aside, the ordinances that have been introduced can be modified before second reading and before final adoption without further advertisement by the township committee if that change that is being proposed is insubstantial and it is not a material change to the ordinance. That's a decision that really the township attorney makes. If I were in his shoes, I would think that this proposal, this specific proposal, is really a clarification. It's not a material change. I think the intent was, just as this additional language clarifies, so I would think that that can be moved before second reading, and then the ordinance considered for second reading as amended without having a further advertisement, which would delay it for another meeting before it could be adopted. But that's not my call, that's the township attorney's call. But we should certainly make that recommendation to the township committee.
I have two more that are very insubstantial, as long as we're talking about them. The first one is section, well, first of all, on page 1, opposite the first indented paragraph, there are the words section 1 hanging out there. And if you turn the page, you'll see there's a section 2. I don't really understand what that section 1 and section 2.
Yeah, that's the
Section 1 of the resolution.
Of the ordinance.
The definition, section 2 of the ordinance deals with the 606.6.
Okay. I'll give you the other two. One is in 301.27.1 on page 1. 301.27.1. The word use appears. That's the only place it appears on the whole page. All the others just say art studio, education, play center, health and fitness facility, indoor commercial, recreation. I don't know what the word use is doing there. And the other one, again, was insubstantial, is on the next page in 301.60C, line 2. I suggested that the word immediately previous user should be inserted. The word immediately should be inserted before previous user. Now, we've had a couple of instances where the issue has arisen, and I pointed this out to the planner, and he seemed shocked. He said, I've never really considered this. We had a case where a parking variance was asked for that building that used to be a pancake house, and before that a Chinese restaurant. And the question of parking under the ordinance as it exists today, you have to determine what the previous user's parking was. Well, everyone sat around the room and said, that building has been vacant for, I don't know, 4 years, 3, 4, 5 years. Does anyone remember how many chairs were in that place? And of course, everyone on the board just looked at each other, and nobody could, I mean, even if you remembered what it looked like inside, which I didn't, it was pretty small, but nobody could remember the number of chairs which determine the number of parking spaces. And I pointed that out to the planner, and he said, oh my God, I thought I had thought of everything, but he said, I never thought about that. Well, this is a little bit like that in the sense that it says in excess of the previous user. Which previous user? I thought immediately previous user would at least tell us, it wouldn't solve the pancake house problem, but it would at least make it clear that we were looking at the last person who was in that space. And hopefully, in most cases, they would still be there. So you could determine what the parking requirement was. Those are two fairly insubstantial changes, but I throw them out there for what they're worth. I'm sure others might have read this ordinance with a sharper eye than I and found other stuff.
I don't know if that's possible, Joe.
Yes, it is. Believe me, it is.
Can I just ask a question? In the township committee's discussion last night, were there any changes that were made to this? Did you?
Not last night, at the
Okay.
when it was introduced, as new business, because that's the way we do it, we introduce as new business before we introduce it as an ordinance. Yes.
Didn't know that.
So when it was introduced as new business and it was drafted and we talked about it then, so we did make changes at that point.
Okay, but nothing from last night. So this reflects what?
This reflects first reading?
I
Yeah,
believe so.
okay.
Because you had some questions specifically to go back to Paul with.
Right, and they made some changes,
Yeah.
and, right.
Okay, and those changes were captured in this, okay.
But I missed that one. I missed that one.
Yeah, I had that one too. That was good.
That's a big one.
30160D, the first one,
Yeah, that's the big one.
is the big one.
No, you have a
As
good
far as
memory,
immediately
Joe, 'cause that
previous,
pancake house one, we talked a lot about the parking.
previous means the prior
that's
previous.
fine.
To me, I would have gone to the pancake
Yeah, my
house,
view is
but-
inherent too, but.
Yeah.
But actually, it was a Chinese restaurant after the pancake house. Pancake
Right.
house was
Right.
really, really, really old. And it was
Wasn't
Chinese,
there like two versions of Asian restaurants
Yes.
before? I mean, at least.
and the second one flopped pretty quickly and then burnt down, because it
Right.
was,
There you go.
and now it's been, I can't believe that they haven't started building there. Is there a limit on when we approve that?
I don't think there's a limit, I think you just, but, okay, so,
Oh, terrific.
they submitted.
Good.
Here we go.
Questions, thanks.
Good to know. It's happening.
Mr. Bear has the floor.
There we go.
And the dais and ceiling. Let's go to, section 606. 606.7, the central business B4, I applaud loudly the fact that you have entertained changing the maximum building height. I think that's important. In your discussions, was there ever anything that related to the need to set back upper stories or anything like that? Or because I looked at the B4, and the B4 basically has 100% building coverage. I didn't find anything in there that required any type of setback over so many feet. Is there a setback? I didn't think so. So you're comfortable with the 40 feet?
I don't know if you saw it, Diane, or Cheryl, we had our department to study all the way down Millburn Avenue, both sides of the B4 zone. What was 2 stories, what was 3 stories, and.
I didn't see it, but I think Alex had told me
that's how
about
it's
it.
kinda-
Yeah.
But that's kind of, but we didn't have any discussion as to setting back the
Mhm.
potential third floor.
Okay, just asking, because I know that a few years ago when we had our group and our discussion, we actually talked a little bit about providing a little bit of relief. Like, you're 40 feet, you have a wide street. I don't necessarily think that there's going to be any, air and light issues. Again, I applaud you guys for moving that forward. The only other thing is that a little bit concerned about the commercial medical office. When we changed that zone, that basically that zone was intended to capture what was there, what was happening in the market at that point in time, which was basically medical offices and related types of services. There are some warehouse, but it seems that with this, that zone has become the catch-all. Can I ask you about, and I had discussions with Paul Phillips before about the intent of the CMO zone and what we were really thinking back then when we made that change. It wasn't this. It wasn't basically, if it doesn't fit anywhere else, let's throw it in the CMO zone. And it kind of seems like that's what's happening here.
But if you look at those uses, because actually what we did is, when we looked at the uses that we wanted to allow, we then went back and said, okay, what zones do you want to see this in? Do you want to see this? And if you look at like health and fitness facilities, showrooms, and they're all permitted in other zones as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like they just got dumped
Right.
in the CMO.
Okay, but I'll go indoor commercial recreation, which if you look at the definition, that could be a bowling alley, educational play center, instructional, pet care, grooming. We already have uses down there that I would debate really should be down there, but unfortunately, they've been.
Like what? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Like,
Such as?
Oh, the AAA facility. I still debate the AAA facility.
But that's actually been a permitted use forever.
No,
Light assembly manufacturing?
no. I think that I'm gonna put it out here. I think you guys are turning it into a dumping area for uses, and that's just that's my opinion. Again, if you go back and you look at the intent of the zone was to capture what was happening there at the time. What was happening there at the time is that we were getting applications for reuse of these large buildings. These large buildings were housing a lot of medical uses, medical offices. We were also getting light industrial uses down there, but we weren't getting pet grooming. We weren't getting pet care. So there was, it just seems to me that there are these uses there, as Eileen said, there are these uses there. We looked at the other places, they didn't, I'm not paraphrasing you. They didn't fit, so let's put them there. I just need to rethink, I think you need to rethink the CMO zone and what you guys are proposing. That's my 2 cents.
I hear what you're saying, but I also think that when you looked at this, what year did you guys look at the CMO zone? And I think one of the things we have to look at is what's happening in today's world, because what's happening in today's world is not what's happening when you were sitting on the township committee.
I still think you're using it as a dumping ground, Cheryl.
Hear you.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I just because I'm trying to, I hear what you're saying, but I'm just trying to understand why. I think dumping ground sounds really negative, but why not make it more flexible and allow more things there? Why is that a bad thing? Like, why couldn't you have a doggy daycare back there if somebody wants to use an industrial site to have a?
Well, that's your opinion.
I'm asking you because I want to understand why it's.
Well, I think
it wouldn't be a good thing.
And I can still go back there, and I still think that area reflects the market that we were dealing with back then. I think you still have a lot of the medical uses. You still have the light industrial uses. We had an application tonight for a light industrial use, right? Moving across the street from where they are. Okay. But
the fact is that I just don't think that you can deny the fact that none of these fit into other zones in the town, so therefore you're putting them.
Well, there are other zones, that's
Yeah.
the thing.
Yeah.
They're downtown
Yeah.
now.
You have educational play centers, you have instructional schools and studios, you have pet care and grooming, showrooms, indoor commercial recreation, and health and fitness, all of, in other zones. So I don't know why you say that they're not in other zones.
Because the intent, yeah, okay, I'll say it again ad nauseam.
No,
The
I hear
intent,
what you-
the
I-
intent
the-
was
Right,
to create a zone that would accommodate the types of uses that were locating there at the time and are still locating over there.
so what you're not saying so
So-
much that it's a dumping ground, but we
Well,
shouldn't be
it's dumping
opening it up
ground.
so much to other uses than what was in.
Why is that necessary?
No,
If they are
that's what you
located
said.
in other zones within the town, why is that necessary?
But that's a different point than what
Well, no,
you're
then
calling it a dumping ground.
But no, then it is a dumping ground, because if they're located in other zones within the town, why is it necessary to open up this zone too and put everything there? Because not every other zone in the town allows all of these uses, okay? And they're fairly intense uses that generate a lot of traffic. So I just wanna know what was the thinking behind creating a zone that would accommodate all these uses, that's all.
I think it's also partially to allow businesses to come into town. If there's spaces that aren't being used, it opens it up to possibilities.
And we've seen those kind of applications as well.
Right.
With fitness
Like
center
the
and
CrossFit.
whatnot.
Well, the CMO zone used to be a light industrial zone,
Right.
and there
We're
was
seeing
no
that
more light
transform.
industry.
Well,
Well, there's-
we just had an application tonight that's
Well,
light
there is
industry,
some,
yeah.
there is
Right,
some,
the other ones we've seen were like
but
CrossFit.
a lot of it is in China now.
For now.
Yeah,
All right, okay. You've heard that you guys make the decision, you've heard my
But like,
concerns.
that's like when we talk about the ordinance, when we have the second reading of the ordinance, those are exactly the kinds of things I think that people should be coming to the township committee and saying, this is.
Well, maybe somebody will.
I hope so. I want
It
to.
won't be me.
No.
No, I don't do that.
So this is gonna come back August 13th, and Paul Phillips will be in attendance to actually address and answer questions.
August 13th, we're at the township committee.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's great. I hope he gets questions.
I hope so.
You know, he's not gonna get any from me. I won't either, so.
You can always write them in,
No, look, my role on the planning board is to provide, is ask these questions, I'm not gonna go up in front of you guys and debate this, I will not do
No,
that.
I understand that, but, so it's your position then that this might not be in accordance with the master plan?
Yeah, that's my question.
Because of this extended, the extensive uses that we are
And I want,
suggesting.
yeah, and I want you to think about that, and, let's leave it at that.
Yeah,
I've
but I wouldn't
spoken
say
my
it's the
piece.
position of the board at large that this proposed use is.
I'd have to see a provision of the master plan that would be impacted negatively by these uses. I can't think of
I
that.
think there was the intent of the CMO zone.
Pardon me?
I think the intent
But
of
is
the
the
CMO
CMO
zone.
zone still
Yeah.
necessary, or should?
No,
Okay.
I don't have the master
But
plan
thank you,
with me.
I mean, I do appreciate your thoughts.
You're welcome. I mean them certainly in the most positive way.
I understand, no, I absolutely,
So you guys think about it and do what you need to do.
we'll sleep on it, right?
And again, with
Oh, no,
respect
you're
to this
gonna-
item,
you're gonna take it under
we'll be
advisement.
voting on whether this is not inconsistent with the master plan. And is that a roll call vote?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, before we take the roll call vote, I will open it to the member of the public. Hold one moment, are there other items that we wanna discuss or bring up before? Okay. Would you, you don't need to be sworn in, but you can come on up so we can hear you for the record.
Gary Heller, 56 Byron. Mr. Buzak, if I may ask, again, I've participated this in other towns' processes when the township considers an ordinance change, height, setbacks, and other things. It refers to often to the planning board for a recommendation, the 35 days. It often takes that 35 days, if not longer. Sometimes the township committee has to wait to take its vote. There's some very substantial things in here. One of them in particular I'll point out, but there's others that haven't been considered. I'm not sure if everything in this ordinance is a change or if it's just the items that are underlined. But let me just lead to one item and then you'll tell me if you'd like to go on. In the B4 zone, and I've brought this up any number of times, either here, the master plan process, township committee. If we're going to go up a floor, again, through the master plan reexamination process, the language in there was at least, if I remember correctly, 3 stories. Height is defined by many things, parapet walls, air conditioning units, other sorts of things. That 40 foot, to me, is still unclear. Township committee certainly can have its own discussions and further that later. But here at the planning board, both that and something rather substantial on the top of page 4. All right, so my building is pretty much at 343 Millburn Avenue, built to the property line. All right, if you look on the top of page 4, in the B4 zone, we have 100% building coverage. All right, so the B4 zone is a big zone. Has the board considered every lot within the B4 zone before they make a recommendation to the township committee to approve this?
I'm not sure I understand, this is the existing, the 100%.
I understand, but they're also going from 2 stories to 3 stories, whatever it may be. Anything that goes up, and I'm not sure why it stops at 3 when we have 4-story buildings in the town. We talked about that at the master plan process, but leave that aside for the moment. We have 100% building coverage, 100% lot coverage.
Right.
So my understanding of that, and I'll leave maybe to Joe and Ms. Buzak to tell me differently, that means you can build to the perimeter of your property.
That is
Have you examined every single property, and it goes for the 2 township committee people, have you examined every single property as Paul Phillips, and has this board tonight examined every property in the B4 zone, how that's going to impact residential zones? That you put in going to Dan's question, whether articulation or building to a property line, let's use by example where School of Art is. That's the B4 zone. There's houses in the backyard of that property. So while it does exist, nevertheless, someone right now is not building residential on that property. But as you go up, 3 stories, 4 stories, 5 stories, whatever it may be, you're going to create a different value for property. Train tracks is different. The Wells Fargo property, which was discussed last night, which is primarily why this ordinance is being brought to you tonight, is Wells Fargo wants to be residential, and there's no way for it to become residential with a 28-foot height, with a affordable housing lawsuit that's still out there. There's not going to go to the Board of Adjustment. That is just one of the substantial issues, both for here and for the Township Committee, that we should be considering every minute and every second of the 35 days before you let this come out of this board and give a recommendation, resolution, whatever is being asked here tonight. I can go over any number of other things. That's the biggest one.
I appreciate that comment. I think, I mean, it's not, doesn't have to be debated, but I think, the regulation as it stands now, it could be 100% coverage up 28 feet, which would also have an impact.
But as you go higher, my son's now working 1,200 feet in the air on 57th Street at the Steinway Piano Building. As you go taller and taller in zoning, you're going to get more applications coming to you. So my building's not going to change, but you will have other downtown buildings that are perhaps up against the residential zone. Wells Fargo primarily covers the one corner, but it's certainly not the only one, but with particular reference to the, next to the post office for that matter. I don't know if Millburn Post Office owns its own land. We all know what's happened in Maplewood, but most post offices are owned by developers, and the leases are running out on the post offices, in Montclair, by example. So that's another property that backs up against a residential zone. So I think a much harder look at this, as well as perhaps, whether it's in the B2 zone, B3 zone, there's some other rather, inconsistencies of things that should be looked at. The B3 zone, which I think must go back, and Joe, I'll ask you maybe, paragraph 1, retail sales, retail services with food stores limited in size to 15,000 square feet. Elaine, I might even ask you go back, I think even further than Joe. Do we want a 15,000 square foot food market in the B3 zone?
I was going to bring that up.
That's existing right now.
Understood, but we're taking an opportunity to look at this, and I think the opportunity, going back to the master plan again, this was, goes back to prior chairman, and again, whether money, time, and we did a re-examination, There hasn't been a new master plan done since, I believe, 1985. Before I would, trying to find the right adjective, but before we carelessly go about changing height in the town, I think we should consider setbacks, pervious, impervious, including in, the downtown, and to Dan's reference, and I would have said the same thing, articulation. I'm not sure it matters a whole lot at 3-story, but Joe, if I may, to your board, when Rich Keller, Mark Burson, and the common lot, why that office building has stopped being built came in front of your board and was referred out of the board to come back again. They're now combining the garage with that building next door. And it's going to be kind of a pretty building, but the board, among other reasons, right, these two buildings are going to be combined, the lots are going to be kind of combined. The apartment building, the two apartments, house is going to stay there in the front. Where? So the planning board approved.
Right.
Well, it came to the Board of Adjustment last month
Okay.
to combine the two lots into one to make the garage as part of an office building.
West of it?
The garage, the old hamburger.
Oh, the garage.
The garage.
Got it.
I didn't know
All right,
either.
okay.
So, to the Board of Adjustment, because of two different uses, apartments in the front, and again, why this is going to be even material here tonight, but again, first thing, should be calling Rich Keller and the applicant, it's going to be a 2-story building, a funky, strange building. The board criticized some of the look, whether it was too Soho-y, too this. I talked about landscaping. Rich talked about, we don't know when complete streets. I said we should put in trees. Charlie Brown's maybe isn't going to get done. We'll get trees on the other side. The larger point even to that is, that's came to the board because it was a 28-foot height. Now we have a 40-foot height. It's a stupid building because of water and other issues, which came first to this board, then to Joe's board, and it's going to have parking with screening on the first floor and an entryway. Now they're going to have a second elevator. But now I would think that they very much, and what should happen there is that building should get smaller, to the same point that I'm making to the, call it the School of Rock building, smaller footprint. You might give some more height, because if you're going to have articulation, same thing that's done in New York City or other cities, Montclair, you make something smaller. You might go up another floor, but you create more light and greater setbacks to the neighbors. My larger point is not to design any of the properties, is I don't think we tonight at the planning board should be making a recommendation. I think to open this process up, I've seen other township committees have referred this to the planning boards and let the planning board get the planner. You instead at the township committee decided to get your town planner to do it there. Often it's done at the planning board process. But whatever process you choose to do, I think it needs to be more than just tonight. I mean, I can go on to any number of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 other issues here that both of which, said some are existing, but shouldn't leave some alone and tend to others.
Okay, I appreciate the comment. I think, the process that our township chooses to use is the process we use, we have.
But you have
planners,
35
I think
days.
there's- Appreciate that, yes, we do. The planners who the township has hired, regardless of whether the planning board, hired the planners to work with or not, I think we benefit from the fact that these planners have been with us through the reexamination process and have been exposed to the public input and our community's desires and the direction we want to go. Not to say that they got it right every time
Nevertheless-
and we don't have the duty to review
Nevertheless, the
it.
township committee, despite your process and despite that grand process, is now making changes to the zoning, some of which is encouraged, but again, other things are not being
It's fair.
dealt with here. And the planning board is typically where these things are done. It can be done certainly at township committee, but it's typically done here with guidance and advice at a planning board. It's sort of a misnomer these days. It's approval board, non-approval board rather than planning board, with exception to doing a master plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Terry, don't you mind? You stated that you had specific issues beyond the time element. I'd be interested in hearing those specific issues. If they're something that you think there are concerns, then I think we should have those on the record. We should hear those.
I'm unclear from this, the definition of site plan. Is this meant to deal with the change of use or change of user ordinance? Does a camera store going to a jewelry store need to come to the planning board? Doesn't say this. This says change of,
That's not a change of use. It's the same use, it's retail sales. So that is not a change of use. And that's the whole genesis behind it is if there's a change of use, changes of, that would be considered a change of tenancy. It's the same use group.
so where in this new document does it eliminate what we have been requiring tenants
Never
to?
require them to come for that. Retail sale to retail sale has, if it was the same use, we would never have to come to.
But retail sale to retail service, we have,
Different use, we will not have to.
it's not a different use group.
Well, it's always been treated as a different use.
I understand, but
because
it's-
Retail sale and retail service. and that's
Well,
the way it was presented.
I would like the board, as part of this, to consider that, because by example, if a nail salon goes to a jewelry store goes to a nail salon, and needs to
Well,
come,
that one's not gonna have to come because unless it has an increase in parking, it's gonna be site plan exempt. That's what the ordinance is.
I read this, and any tenant that wants to come into town, this is still confusing, and I think that's well appreciated, and I think it's good to have that change, but I don't really see that, and to your question, I don't see that clarity of trying to encourage like users to come, to the town without having to come to the planning board. I think some really nice changes are clear here of not having to have necessarily a site plan, and hiring an engineer, and hiring and getting drawings, and having our town planner do all sorts of things, but as far as the change of user, change of use, I'm not sure that's clear, and I think comparing this to what is in place already.
Yeah, Carrie, I don't know, I think it's,
I mean, it says
with
changes
respect,
of
yeah,
use.
I think it's pretty clear, unless you have the requirement of additional parking or generate additional traffic, I don't remember exactly, then you don't have to come in front of
Who's
this
making that
board.
decision?
What's
And
that?
how are you?
Here, so I would make that decision.
What page are you on?
301.6.
B, is that what you're looking at?
B, yes.
Yeah.
That's,
Is change of tenancy a defined term?
Yeah, I believe
I'd love
it.
to see that just dropped.
This thing.
Yeah.
No, we define change of use.
So
Change of-
maybe change of tenancy should be a defined term if you're gonna use that term.
Or drop.
Or drop, well, no, because the concept is if you're not changing your use and you're only changing your tenancy, so, when I was on the zoning board, we had a matter where a, cleaner went from a cleaner to a nail salon. Do you remember that? And it was actually appealed, your decision that it was a change of use was appealed and you, what?
It wouldn't have been a change of use.
Yeah, it wasn't,
So-
I guess you made the determination it was a change of use and they appealed it and the zoning board actually overturned that. They're great expert. But, so that would not have so I think, I think that if we have a term, change of tenancy, I don't think it's a bad term if it's defined.
But it doesn't drive the action. The change of tenancy
Change
doesn't
of
have
use drives
change of use drives the
It
action,
says
so.
changes of use which do
Yeah.
not involve an increase in the number of required off-street parking spaces shall be site plan exempt.
Yeah.
That's pretty
No,
clear.
I
Well,
think
maybe
that's
you
clear.
can say, I think the question is if there's no change of use, it's also site plan exempt, right?
If there's no change of use,
But it
right,
was
that's the
already.
change of tenancy.
What?
Are there other?
to the average, I still think it's not perfectly clear reading it as a property owner and tenants coming in, and whether you go to Buckholz or any of these guys, Weil, there's a lot of people that don't even make it to this board or through Eileen, not having to do with Eileen to even past, because they're just not sure and they don't want to hire an attorney, and you get a landlord and you get a tenant, and now either or may not want to wait the 60 days, 90 days, 120 days getting on to your board. I think having that clarity to make it what we call idiot-proof, meaning everybody just knows exactly what it is that you have to do, and then the increase of parking, you could have a non-busy restaurant, a non-busy nail salon, and a really busy dress shop. So I'm not sure, again, that's perfectly the way to define whether someone has to come to the planning board. So to answer your question, if I may, on another end, and one's going to particularly pertain to Cheryl, and Diane in a moment. But Joe, we talked about this at one of the, and I think it was at the, what we'll call it, the former Pancake House, or the most recent Chinese restaurant, under Central Business District number 3. In theory, a store is defined differently than a restaurant. Can you put residential over a restaurant?
Yes, yes.
Where, I hear you, but where does it say it?
That was actually, and I have, because initially, that wasn't initially in it, and when we were redoing this, I knew the issue came up, and that's why they added, but not, actually that was added, but not on ground floor. But they were supposed to take out over stores and just put apartments, but not on the ground floor, so that it was clear that apartments.
Where are you looking?
606.7.
Page 3.
606.7,
B three.
606.6.
You on page 3?
6.1, oh, apartments over,
Right, but not on the ground floor.
the words over stores, you say,
Yeah.
should have been deleted.
We're supposed to be,
Yeah, we did have that issue.
they got it.
And it can come up a lot
Thank
of
you.
food uses around town. So again, whatever the intent, and that's certainly a note too. If I may, and one substantial, again, listening to last night and having some background on the Wells Fargo, which for those who aren't aware, it's a property that's vacant. It's come in front of the town to figure out what to do, and it's burned for some time. It may even go back, I think, to when you were mayor, going back to last year. I've had a lot of contact with the gentleman from Texas and Florida over the last 2 years. I think you're crafting your ordinance where it's not going to work. Number one, you're still not allowing residential on ground floor, and as best as I have seen from that application, both last night and prior, that's all ground floor residential. So how's that project going to?
This wasn't done with Wells Fargo, no.
Not to my
This was done
knowledge.
before Wells Fargo.
Well, but again, I bring to your attention, tonight, that if you're looking to cure at least the ground floor portion of that problem, or as we talked about the reexamination report and talked extensively with Paul, and I don't remember the name of his assistant, B4 zone really should be split into different zones. If we so wanted what they call the gateway into town, but they want to make that into residential on the ground floor. I'm not sure whether it should be or it shouldn't be. There are some large, great retail uses that want to come to new, higher ceilings, loft-like, good parking, good loading, other sorts of things. There's other retail that isn't going to rent for beans right now. But we're not curing the Wells Fargo problem by dealing with this here. So I'm not by any means against, I don't think there should be, in the B4 district, there should be apartments in ground floor. There are some that do exist, but I don't think we should be enhancing it. So I agree with this, but it's not necessarily curing the Wells Fargo. I think the planning board might want to talk with the township committee before referring this on to get a better result, so as to not have to come back here again and to be doing this perhaps all over again.
I hear you, Carrie, and I think that the intent of the B4 zone, and I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, is to have those types of uses on the ground floor that generate traffic, and generate activity and excitement, things like that, which aren't necessarily residential, okay? Essentially, residential, it's gonna take up space, and somebody's gonna go out in the morning, basically back at night. So while the discussion about whatever's gonna happen on Wells Fargo, which is not even an application yet, okay, it's an idea and it's being discussed, may end up with a different style, may end up with residences on the first floor. I think that that's something that is consistently, it is not consistent with the rest of the downtown. The intent of the downtown to be to first floor in the downtown, which is to generate the activity, to have those uses that draw people. So I can tell you, I think that this is definitely the direction to go, and I think that the township committee and the planning board, or wherever board that application may go to, if it ever comes up, we'll need to deal with it in a different way. It's a different type of use, and I don't even know right now what the application will look at. It's basically speculation right now. I know they've talked about ground floor use, but I don't think that's something that needs to be consistent throughout the rest of the downtown. I just don't think that's what the downtown needs. So I think that, let's deal with that. What I'm saying to you is, let's deal with that at the time it needs to be dealt with in maybe a different way. It may require a different type of zoning and overlay or something like that.
Including the possibility of spot zoning as legally.
I didn't say that,
But
you
no,
did.
no, but as, no, let me finish. As
Yeah.
done legally through the redevelopment laws.
Right, that's correct.
Which of course
That's
didn't
correct.
get
You could use
adopted
the area
in
meat,
2008.
absolutely.
We all
Right.
sat and went
Right.
through, I'm pretty sure you were there, I know you were there,
Yeah.
certainly in 2006, 2007. There's all sorts of ways to accomplish that. But,
Right.
yeah, larger point being done is, I think there's a lot more to this than just passing this back to the township committee. That's my question or request.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, and I appreciate that comment. I think our goal is to collectively comment and be responsive on this document. I think we have, so Eileen, do you prepare, like, the note or comments, how do comments officially get transmitted? It's a letter that you would prepare?
Whatever this board decides, I summarize it and send it over to the township clerk.
Great. So certainly you've captured the comment that Joe provided.
Well, I wanna make a change in that. The more I've thought about this, I think that subsection D on page 2 should be deleted entirely. And I would go back to B, 301.60B, and I think that should probably read, building alterations and/or changes of use, comma, and/or changes of tenancy, which do not involve an increase, et cetera, shall be site plan exempt. That puts it all in one sentence, doesn't have that
It's much more
that
clear.
change of tenancy hanging out down there by itself, that raises all kinds of issues, even if you put my suggested language in there.
I actually
So-
think we should have a change of tenancy definition.
Pardon me?
I think we should have a change of tenancy definition.
But we could still include it.
Well-
there.
Still put
Yeah.
it there, yeah.
Yeah. But do you agree
Yeah, I
that,
agree.
that
Absolutely.
whole section should come
Yes.
out?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so,
So D should be deleted, and building alterations and/or changes of use, and/or changes of tenancy, which do not involve an increase, et cetera, would
did you capture that? Yeah. And then,
makes a lot more sense.
thank you. And remove D.
How did you want to, you made a comment about, 301.27.1, where they start the sentence with uses including.
Just take the word use out from that,
And just
indoor
say
commercial
including but
recreation.
not limited
I'm
to.
sorry, you're where?
307.21.
Page 1.
Point one,
I'm-
indoor commercial.
So you just
Oh,
take the
on
word
301.27.1, God bless you.
Thank you.
I would,
No.
I would take the word use out
So
in
it should
that.
be
Just
indoor commercial recreation,
colon.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
just the word use.
Got it.
It's the only one
Oh,
that has, God bless.
Excuse me, thank you.
It's the only one that has the word use.
Yeah.
Commercial recreation.
Doesn't have the one word.
How would you,
Where are you?
how would you
Oh,
define,
yes, use.
you said you think there ought to be a definition of change in tenancy. Why do you think there needs to be a definition? And how would you define it?
I would put, I'm not sure, but it would be I don't know, but I think that, do people know when they're reading change of tenancy, it means not a change of use?
A new tenant.
A new tenant with, under the same use class? I
Well,
mean, that's really my
we have-
question, is
We
that?
have, if the board adopts my recent proposal there's a change of tenancy and a change of use.
Right.
They've gotta be different. I mean, they are different.
Yeah,
I don't know
okay.
that you need
Good,
a
I'm good.
definition of a
Okay.
change in tenancy. Lawyers know what a change in tenancy is, right? Even he does, he's not a lawyer.
But do landlords
That's right.
or property owners? That's
Oh,
what's
they
in
know
there.
because they need a new lease signed.
Yeah, they need an HME.
He knows what a
They
change
get
is.
it better than everybody, believe me.
Okay. You captured the overstores removal from apartments, which I know you mentioned was a
What about the immediately, are we gonna,
I think there's no consensus on
we're
that
gonna
one.
leave that?
Yeah, we all think it's
I'm
a
comfortable
priority.
without adding immediately, unless the hearing is strong. We're talking about in the site plan exempt, adding that immediately before we do it.
So we're putting it in, the word immediately.
I'm okay not doing it.
I
I'm
think
okay not
there's no
recommending.
consent, I think people think it's inherent in the sentence, you know.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry, Joe.
You get one, you lose one.
I've been overruled, that's fine.
I think you'd rather win on
My
your
wife
paper.
overrules me all the time. I'm accustomed to it.
So in the neighborhood B3 and B4, the removing the words over stores. Okay.
It's in two places, I believe, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait, should
Go
it
ahead.
say residence, or does it have to say apartments?
Well, it could be condos.
I guess it could be.
Because they used to be, because they're not on the.
Yeah, but residences.
You could say residential.
You could say residential use,
Yeah,
Residential.
residential
Yeah.
use, not on the ground.
that covers both.
Right.
Thank you. Good call.
Good, good.
I got one.
Yeah, there you go.
Don't get one.
1 point to you.
All right.
I do appreciate the conversation that we've had, that Dan brought up and Carrie, emphasized of this, looking at potential, I think, can we make a recommendation that they consider and review setbacks at heights?
I think we have to.
I do too.
So
That is
I'm
a
not
very
proposing
good
language, but I am proposing a recommendation that they,
Both for maximum lot coverage and also for the articulation.
Yeah, I
And also what?
Articulation. I didn't articulate well.
so
So you're gonna,
the recommendation would be
that the ordinance is not inconsistent with the master plan, but the following,
but there is a recommendation to consider,
Consider-
further refinement or,
further review of lot coverage and before as well as,
yeah, before.
Yeah.
an increased setback or.
If there's a need for.
Explore any setback, yeah.
Is it possible to suggest that it's not ready for final vote? These are further considered without saying it's not inconsistent?
Aren't they permitted principal?
I don't know.
Either,
I think that probably oversteps our role. The role is that it's the township committee's function to propose ordinances. Our function is to look at the ordinance and to make a determination as to whether it's consistent or inconsistent with the master plan and make any recommendations with regard to the ordinance that we have. I suppose you can say, don't adopt the ordinance at all, but I think that, two things. You're never gonna get a perfect ordinance.
Of course.
This is always a work in progress, and to delay what appears to be important changes that will enhance the ability of the zoning officer to do her job, to clarify things, because there are other issues that are legitimate issues. I think we're going to be chasing a goal that we're never going to accomplish and we're never going to achieve. So from just a mechanical point of view, I think it's important that if you want to raise other issues that the township committee should consider that were triggered as a result of your review of this ordinance, I think that's legitimate. But I mean, it's up to you, but I certainly would not recommend that you recommend that this ordinance be held until these other issues can be resolved.
I'm not saying they need to be resolved, but certainly considered.
Well, when it goes back to them, in reality, this'll be given to the township committee and it will be brought up at the second reading, and the result of that will be, if the township committee buys into it, will be, the ordinance will be delayed. They're not gonna do it at that point, they're gonna get the planner, and it's gonna be another month or 2 months or 3 months to get all of this done, and then it's gonna get back on. But again, that's not my call, that's your call.
Back in October, November, the Washington school rezoning. Remember, the clock was ticking on that. You're at the planning board, and you ended up making the motion to have that done. Had you not done anything at the planning board, rather than voting it down, I'm not suggesting you do this, but if you do nothing, whether now or have it again on your agenda in 2 weeks to discuss, the clock ticks 35 days,
35 days.
nothing happens. Again, you have to go back and do first reading and modify.
No. The township committee is required to introduce the ordinance to refer to the planning board. The planning board has 35 days from the date of that referral to make a determination as to whether it's consistent or inconsistent with the master plan and/or make any recommendations on the ordinance. If the planning board fails to act within that 35 days, the township committee is then permitted to do whatever it wants to do with the ordinance. We don't hold up the township committee. We hold them up for 35 days, for a maximum of 35 days, and that's it. On the 36th day, they can have their meeting and adopt the ordinance, be completely legal.
But you don't have to vote. You don't have to make a recommendation.
That's what he said.
No, that's right, we don't have to make any recommendation, but
But we're
perhaps
here,
would be
and they can do
down
it
with
without our
duties
recommendation anyway.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
doing
Yeah.
that.
clearly, okay.
So when you wear a different hat, you could choose what to do with the information
Exactly.
that planning board Cheryl recommends.
Well, Cheryl, are we gonna discuss this in our July TC meeting, even though it's not for second read in August?
Yeah, we should be discussing, yeah, we could.
Right.
Yes, I don't know.
We could, just,
We'll have to ask our lawyer.
we'll put it on the agenda for under old business, discuss it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Once an ordinance is put in, I have no clue. I
Mm.
just don't know if once the ordinance has its first reading, whether then you discuss it. I
You
don't think so.
typically,
Don't, right?
I'm not your township
I
attorney,
know,
but
that's why I
typically
wasn't
you
asking
do
you
not,
right
you
before
do not do that.
Right.
This is a process, that you
Right,
introduce
exactly.
an
And
if we
ordinance,
were to make
it's a
changes
mechanical
to the
process,
Right,
you don't
right.
stick it
So
on
we
an
can
agenda,
do that
and then
discuss
vote at
it,
the time.
because the public doesn't know you're discussing it, and
Exactly.
Right.
you've already
No.
told them you're going to discuss it for second
Exactly.
reading in
So,
August, so.
I guess we can figure out ways to.
I'm sure you can.
finesse
Your
this, so
attorney, yeah.
we'll figure it out.
Okay.
So I guess the next question would be the commercial district. Are we, the medical office CMO, are we making a recommendation as a board to not use it as a dumping ground? As sort of biblically.
Well, I didn't necessarily ask that the board make a recommendation, I made the recommendation, Cheryl, okay? I would suggest that if we, first of all, we need to understand, are we submitting a report with respect to our comments? Now, if we're submitting a report with respect to our comments, I would expect those comments to go in that report to the township committee. Okay, I think that if that's the case, I'm fine, let's go, I'm not looking for, if the board wants to support that, if anybody else on the board wants to support, that's fine, but those are my comments and my recommendations. And if we're preparing a report that goes along with this, if we approve this and say this is consistent with respect to the comments that have also been provided, then I'm good.
Well, typically, the actions of the planning board do not include comments. It's whether it's consistent or inconsistent with the master plan, or not inconsistent with the master plan, and any recommendations that you have.
Okay.
This isn't, the purpose of it is very focused to get this ordinance through the process.
Ed, can I ask you a question? Oh, sorry. Okay, so real quick, if we take these recommendations and we discuss it on August
We
13th.
being the township committee.
Yeah, TC.
Okay.
Paul Phillips will be there, we discuss it at second read. If we make changes, it has to go back for another first read the following month?
No, it depends upon
nature of the
the
change, yeah.
materiality and the significance of the changes. If it's a minor, insignificant, immaterial change, someone moves to amend the ordinance, let's say in this case, to delete subsection D and add those words to that. It's moved, it's seconded, there's a vote taken by the township committee on that, and then the ordinance, as it has now been revised, is open to the public for your public hearing. If,
Okay.
on the other hand, that change is a significant change, you follow the same process that if someone moves it, amends it, moves it, seconds it, it's voted on. If it's adopted, if it's a material change, then there has to be, and the public hearing is carried, and there has to be another advertisement
Okay,
for that public hearing for a future meeting that you would have.
but it's still a second read that we would be voting on.
And then
it.
it's the second read.
Right.
Right.
I
Don't
wanna
read
let-
it
I wanna
to
let-
In line with what you just said, I have a suggestion. I think that what we should do is have a vote as to whether or not the ordinance, as it stands now with these technical, insubstantial technical changes, is consistent with the master plan. And we could then report that back to the township committee, assuming that that's a yes vote, with our recommendations, technical recommendations that we've made. And at the same time, in the report, say the township committee may, in the future, want to consider, and then we could throw in Dan's comment, the comment that was made by the public, and that could be discussed and debated by the township committee for future, you know, action or non-action, depending on how they feel about it. But I see this as two completely separate things, and I'm just following basically what our attorney has suggested. If we're making insubstantial language changes, which is what we've been talking about in terms of changing the wording of these several sections, I think that that could be a recommendation that if the township committee adopts that recommendation, it's, and again, assuming the township attorney agrees with our attorney that they're insubstantial language changes, then the township committee can go ahead and adopt this ordinance. Then they can debate the other issues that have been raised, which are very much more substantial, whether or not there should be 100% coverage, whether or not these uses in the CMO should be further amended or some deleted or whatever.
But Joe, that's what I just asked. I asked exactly what you're talking about. And I just want to understand the format of those recommendations. Where those recommendations would be contained in a report from the planning board to the township committee. Is that, is
That's what
that,
it sounds like.
is that what's going to happen?
Well, I guess the only reason I answered differently,
Yeah.
Dan, is that I don't consider it a report. I consider
Okay.
it, you know, it is
Action taken.
action taken of whether it's consistent or inconsistent with the master plan, recommendations for modification
Right.
of the ordinance,
Right.
which would be these technical changes.
Right.
And if you wanna make a recommendation that, and in addition to that, the township, the planning board agreed, and this has to be a consensus of the planning board. The planning board agreed that the township committee should consider the following items that were effectively triggered by your giving us this ordinance, topic A, topic B, topic C. And that's your memo to the township committee.
I can tell you right now, speaking only for myself, who is the only person I can speak for, I would vote yes on the recommendation, the technical recommendations. I would probably vote no on the on the quote recommendations, end of quote, that have been raised by Dan and by the public, because those would be the kinds of things where I would want the planner sitting here talking to us about whether or not those significant changes, I call them significant changes, should or should not be made.
Well, but I don't think that that's what he said. I think what Ed said is that whether or not these were comments made and should be or could be considered, not made, but considered by the township committee,
If
which I
there
think
were-
is hugely different than made by the township committee.
That's all we're asking.
Yeah.
And the
I
fact
mean,
is,
and we can consider them and say, yeah, we consider them and don't agree with them.
That's-
You know,
that's
but
right.
it's just to discuss them.
That's fine.
That's right.
That's how I understood
Yeah,
it
that
from
was
that.
my-
That's correct.
Yeah.
Right.
That's correct.
That's fine.
Okay.
But it's not my fault that the planner's not here tonight.
I know.
So-
We,
I'd
by the way,
requested
we
it as well,
tried.
too. I tried. Go ahead.
There's some things I've been thinking about, and I just haven't spoken about them yet. But basically, I would say, I have to assume that everything in this document with the two ordinances is consistent with the master plan, because I certainly didn't go look at everything with our revised master plan. And there are a couple things, that it's so comprehensive that I have some questions about a couple of these things, like an educational play center. It's in every district. I'm not even sure exactly what it is, and I certainly can't see some of these things,
It's defined.
like that one. What?
They created a new definition for it. It's on the first
Yeah.
page.
Well, they're in every district, that's all I know.
Sure.
And that one, and the instructional schools and studies in every district, is that supposed to be like a full-fledged, it sounds like just a
It's yoga,
small-
Pilates, right?
Like
The
cooking
definitions
classes,
are on
art
this first
classes.
page. But
Well,
you're just noticing that
anyway,
they're
maybe
appearing
I
in many places.
didn't read them correctly, but, and the other thing is with, B3. B3 is on Chatham Road, and it's quite separate from other, there are very small B3 sections in the, zoning. And, I think, that particular district, and I think I mentioned it when, maybe, when I was interviewed, I don't remember, but I think that district really should be a different district than any other, because of its location and because the size of it, and, because it is so busy. But, when I first moved here, 40 or 50 years ago, I don't remember when this went away, but there was a very small A&P. And maybe that's where the 15,000 square foot food store came from. But today, I couldn't imagine a 15,000, any kind of a food store like that in that location. Because of parking, because of trucks, because of in and out and all that kind of thing. It just seems to be a totally inappropriate use for Chatham Road. So those are kind of the things that jumped out at me. And to the good thing, I just love the idea of art gallery and art studio, and that, I think that's a great addition.
Okay. And I appreciate the comment and the sort of the context of that. I mean, there is the limit, and I think, like you're saying, if a use isn't appropriate, then maybe it doesn't come to light.
Where are the other educational play centers, though? I don't even know where.
They're in all
what-
other zones, B2, B3, and B4.
They're already,
Same amount.
and I don't,
Actually, they were approved by the Board of Adjustment. Genius Gems.
Yeah, they're great.
see, I can't picture them that I've ever seen them. Of course, I don't need them, but so
Genius
maybe
Gems
that's
on the
it.
corner of Wyoming and the other one,
First floor.
the indoor playground, Busy Bee.
Busy Bee.
Yeah.
On the way by the.
Okay,
That's-
that I've heard of,
Word on
yes.
Monday.
When I think of.
Who is?
There's two more.
Two more, well,
Wow.
that's what's happening
That's
in
the
the
new
world
Main
today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are the other
The
ones?
one
Just curious,
experience
which
is
zones are they in?
Tutoring facility on Mars Turnpike and,
Okay.
Yeah, that's
something
before the
similar,
board.
a STEM.
STEM.
So I'm looking to get us
Yeah.
all on home,
Yes,
but
yes, let's bring it on home.
but I want to do right by this process as well. So I think, Joe presented a elegant solution to our discussion here, which is that we don't just dismiss comments, but we can move this forward with if we are in consensus with a approval that it's consistent with the master plan, but add some color that we suggest or recommend that Township Committee take a harder, further look at the items. Do you mind, Eileen, reading back what you have in your notes so we can?
My notes would reflect, obviously, not inconsistent with the master plan, if that's the direction you take. And then summarizing the board, I don't wanna say recommends, but just reflecting on the allowable 100% lot coverage allowed with the increase.
We could say we recommend a review.
A review of the following issues, the allowable lot coverage with an increased height and its effect on residential in B4, as well as the third floor height with potential additional setback on the third floor.
Great.
And also what?
And also the CMO zone.
The intent of the
Well,
CMO
also now
zone.
the 15,000 square foot shopping centers in,
In B3.
on Chatham Road.
Food store.
I know.
In B3. Yeah.
And you have the language changes, right?
Yeah, those technical ones.
You have the technical changes.
Yes, I have done.
Okay. So that said, does anyone want to make a motion to
I will make a motion.
approve that set of
To
recommendations?
do what she said.
To do what she said.
To find that the proposed ordinance number 2537-19 is not inconsistent with the master plan, but that the planning board has certain insubstantial recommendations with respect to certain language in the proposed ordinance, and further that we have recommendations that at some future time the township committee take harder look at certain provisions as set forth by Ms. Dow.
I'll second.
Daniel Bear?
He abstains.
No, I would never abstain, I don't do that. I have a I'm sorry. If that's the motion, I have a problem with the motion, and the problem with the motion was that sometime in the future, I don't exactly remember your
Well, then I
phrase that you used, Cheryl, but I really would like the township committee during this period to take these comments into consideration, not at some future
So
time.
maybe take that language, take
Okay.
out that phrase at some future time.
What's this period, like, within?
I wouldn't even say that, I would just say, and
Just
we
to
request
consider,
that.
consider or review.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, without,
following
without a time
items.
frame.
So if we can make that change,
Yeah.
and then go through a motion and second again, then
I'm
that'd be
not
really
repeating what I said.
Well, does the movement agree that the
I
motion should be
absolutely-
amended to
Absolutely.
exclude the
Yes,
language with regard to
yes,
timing?
Yes.
And does the second, I don't know who seconded it? The
I
second,
think it's
Mary-
been seconded.
Mary-
I second, yes, I agree.
okay.
Thank you.
All right, yes.
Elaine Becker?
Yes.
Carol Burstein?
Yes.
Diane Aglo?
Yes.
Johnson Halpert?
Yes.
Henry Metzger?
Yes.
Joe Steiger?
Yes.
Marion Solano?
Yes.
Abstain.
Yes. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I second.
Yes, that, thank you.
Hey, that's mine.
Thank you all. You know, we only had one.
I was just gonna ask
Yeah,
you that.
you know, we only had one this month, so
Copy the
doubly
board.
long. Well, yeah, we only had one in June and one in July. We only had one in June. Well,
Because
it's canceled.
June,
Because it got
yeah.
canceled.
Copy
Yeah.
the board, and my world memo, what she said.
Juneteenth.
I told my husband, we have an early.
I did too.
And so our next meeting is the 17th, is that in July?
It is July, hang on, it's in here. Snuck it back in. 17th of July.
Bye.
Oh, bye, Dan.
I'll see you.
Thank you. And good night.
July 17th, so, and their meeting is supposed to be